As per the notice,
Right now, I don't, but
as per the notice requirements, I think that this meeting was noticed for 10 o'clock. It's 10 o'clock according to my precise phone here, so we will proceed. This morning, I thought where we would do is, if I could, and I actually asked, and thank you for your help to support people here. I want to go back to the issue that we left off on, or one of the issues we left off on the other day, and this is on for new employees, and this is the early retirement calculation. And you may believe that I am kind of going back to ground that we just plowed, but I've actually really want to go back to something that I think is fairly fresh in our mind, because I went back yesterday and did some work on this issue myself, and I actually went back and pulled some of my old notes and some of the old positions, and I think there were several things that are at work here, and I'll kind of, either of you interrupt me if at any time you think I mischaracterize how we got here or that I missed something of importance. We had gone to a 30-year plan. The 30-year plan, however, there was some discussion and a recognition that that depending on economic circumstances, depending on health matters, that after 25 years there ought to be some way that someone could still leave, because we were making this a 30-year issue now. And so we came back and decided that there would be an early retirement option, but the early retirement option was one that, frankly, the city had fairly strong feelings ought to be the exception rather than the rule. And that really not to do that made it essentially a 25-year plan more than a 30-year plan, and so they wanted to make sure that we had a 30-year plan. But even as we calculated it, there was some sense that there ought to be some equity, and if you remember, we came up with an arbitrary floor, and by arbitrary I don't mean in a negative sense, we just picked a number we could all live with. What I decided to do then next was, okay, if it was a 30-year plan, and then we used a 3% number, and if I remember, the 3% number was arrived at because that was a number that had been used in 175 and 185 as somewhat of as a penalty number. But the accrual rate that we were now using under the 30-year plan was 2.5, which meant that a maximum accrual rate for a retirement was 75%. I went back yesterday and said, okay, and then there was the issue. I spoke with both sides. I've spoken with them at length on this. The issue is, well, Rod, it depends on where you begin to count and how you begin to count. The city says, well, wait, if you count backwards from 30, you're really giving them credit for time they did not work, and that really doesn't work. The board says, well, wait a minute, we're getting a double whammy. If you count back from 30, if you count back from 30 and you apply the punitive number, you're really getting a double whammy. And their point being, there's something else that we need to remember, is that if we do, as the task force did, started assuming that somebody came on board at 22 and worked for 25 years, they would be 47 years old, and that whatever penalty they take, even a 10% cut, that cut, if they lived a normal life expectancy, would be a cut that they would see in their retirement every year for the next 30 years, and that's a fairly dramatic dissuasion. So there was reasons, and frankly, all of you seemed to agree, and seem to still agree, that the 25-year mark is really the critical mark, because as the decision gets later to 27, 28, and 29, none of us really believe that that's going to make much of a difference, and frankly should make much of a difference. What you didn't want to do is to see a wholesale exit at after 25 years. I have something that I'd like you guys to give some weight to and see if I at least got my calculations right. If we took the one that's on the board right now, and this is the one the city presented the other day, and I believe is what was agreed upon last year. If we took that number, and admittedly we took 53.5%, which I actually reduced that down to 52.5% for a floor. If we simply took and used the rate of reduction being the same as the rate of accrual, which is 2.5%. I want everybody, because math's never been my strong point, but I want to make sure that we see how little this difference boils down to be then. If we took a person who left after 25 years, if at the end of 25 years, they normally would have accrued under this 62.5%. Is that correct? Yes, that would be their accrual. If we took the 2.5% and we went to, and we took 2.5% for the 5-year shortfall, which would be then 12.5, that would have taken them back to 50, but I lowered the base here to 52.5. The idea being that you guys had agreed and recognized last time that after 25 years, you ought to at least get more than half of your time if you left. If you then just use that one floor, you don't need a floor after that, because the next year, the 26 years would be at 55. At 27 years would be at 60. At 28 years would be at 65. And at 29 years would be at 70. The difference would be, in the last year would be 0.50. In the second to the last year would be 1.0, and the year before that, 1.5. The critical year being the 25th year is the year that you sought to have to dissuade the decision from being made. Under this proposal, it's not a proposal, but under my calculations, which are about to be something for you to consider, under my calculations, the dissuasive year that I had at 52.5 is actually more dissuasive than the one we had already agreed to. It's just that the accrual rate is not as severe thereafter, and in fact is almost inconsequentially different after the 27th year. Now, what I'm throwing out for you, because this is the only issue that we have alive under new hires, what we've been calling the new hires. Tell me why this doesn't address the concerns of the city, which is we want the 25th year to be the dissuading year, that we don't want wholesale exiting after 25. This number is actually lower than the one you had previously agreed to.
Can I just,
John, and go ahead.
I just want to make sure, Senator, we're clear on your math. So kind of going on this chart, year one being 25 years, rather than being in year one, rather than being 53.5, it would be 52.5.
That's correct.
In year two, 26 years, rather than again being 53.5, it would be 55.
That's correct.
Is that correct? In year three, it would now be, rather than being 58.5, it would now be 60.
Correct.
In year four, 28 years, rather than being 64, it would now be 65.
That's correct.
And in the last year, 29 years, rather than being 69.5, it would now be 70. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Just wanted to make sure I have that
Yeah,
correct.
that's exactly what I did. Now, what we've done is we've taken the old retirement calculation method, the new early retirement calculation method that we had agreed on earlier. I've addressed the 25th year in a way in which the city said that was where they were, but once again, I'm paraphrasing, but that's the year when they think most of the decision would be made. And I said, okay, then at that year, let's assume it's 52.5, that addresses what we originally said it ought to be more than half, but thereafter, we use the 2.5 being the accrual rate. We count from that number forward, and in fact, we end up at 70% after 29 years. Which John, taking the 3% and counting backwards, as you know, the most severe difference will still be the 25th year, no matter what you do. That's the year you're always going to pay the most penalty. But you were the one that suggested the other day that the accrual rate ought to be the same as the penalty rate, and I've done that. Now, gentlemen, I know that, please, I give no more weight to my proposals than anybody else's proposals, but my idea here is to take back every night, as I did yesterday, and both of you know this, went back home the night before, sat down, went over my notes, calculations, and then I pulled back out of the old, I pulled back some of the proposals and counter proposals out of my desk from our earlier meetings of last year, and it seems to me that this addresses everybody's concern in a way that addresses the city's concern on 25 being the critical year, and addresses, John, concedes your concern that the penalty rate ought not be greater than the accrual rate.
Correct.
Now, with that on the board, tell me what, I'd like to hear y'all's concerns on why we couldn't agree to this.
John?
I'm very curious what John and the PF.
John, you go first.
We could entertain this with one slight modification.
Okay, that's always the details. What's that
Certainly.
slight modification?
Whether we use 3 years, 2 years, or 5 years calculation, which has a tremendous impact on the long-term pension. If you, currently, it's based on your last 2 years. If you go to your last 5, it can have a tremendous impact.
Okay.
But there's
Let me just.
hope and life in this discussion.
Let me see if I understand this, because now we're kind of moving, but that's fine. I understand. I'm not locking you in. What you're saying now is, well, wait a minute. This also is impacted by an entirely different issue. That entirely different issue is the final calculation rate. John, I'm willing to concede that, but that's not the issue in front of us on this question. On this question, because admittedly, no matter what we do, whatever calculation rate we finally arrive at is always going to have an impact. But on this particular question, on the early retirement calculation, as it relates to this, does this meet your concerns that you addressed to me on Monday?
All right, let's make it simpler, Senator.
Okay.
Let's accept the 2.5% reduction based on, this could put the entire new employee situation to bed once and for all if we accept it right now.
And just so I'm clear, and we've got a clear record here, John, this would mean that if we agree to this change, you would also be adopting all of the new employee benefit modifications that were made as part of the mediation settlement agreement and subsequently endorsed by the Retirement Reform Task Force. Is that correct?
Let's leave the Retirement Reform Task Force out. Let's stick on what we agreed to down there in Gainesville.
Well, no, it's important because they endorsed
The same
the
thing.
mediation
As
settlement.
long as they
So
were
there's
the
no
same,
difference between the two.
as long as they're the same, no tweaks. What we agreed to in Gainesville, in the mediated settlement agreement, with a 2.5% reduction for people who leave at 25 years or more, that would then, if they left at 25 years, they'd get 62.5% and end up, as you said, that would be agreeable. Subject to
No,
the
if
city
they-
agreeing,
no,
so we
if-
can put this to bed once and for all.
If they left at 25 years, they would get 52.5.
How is that a 2.5% reduction from,
If you take 30 years and you back it out, and it's at 2.5, so if you're leaving 5 years early, times 2.5, less that should be 12.5, which would have taken it to 50. But we had already agreed to a floor. The floor was 53.5. I lowered the floor at 25 to 52.5. So the first year it's 52.5. The second year it's 55, which is essentially a point and a half higher than it was before. Then it goes to 60, 65, and 70. The 29-year guy goes out at 70. The 25-year guy goes out at 52.5.
so you're starting at the bottom again rather than from
I'm
from
starting.
30
Well,
going early.
yeah, I am in this sense. I'm taking the difference using the multiplier, because that's the only way it makes sense. The multiplier is really the deterrent. But what I'm doing is I'm making sure that we take, for every one of those years they work, we're using that same multiplier to, by using 3, you increase the penalty. By using 2.5, you make the accrual rate and the penalty rate exactly the same.
Acceptable.
So they get the benefit of the year.
Acceptable?
Got it. All right.
Good.
You took it. Now it's back on your ball.
What do you think?
It's still the same. We'll take it, provided that all the other new benefits stay the same, so.
So I'm going to be clear with everybody, because I'm not as tricky as my reputation may be. This is the issue that I saw as the only open issue on new hires. Now, is there anybody over on your side that believes there's another new hire issue open?
We don't, but I just
No,
think.
but I want to be clear.
I understand.
I'm just.
John, do you believe there's another new hire issue that's
There's no new
open?
issue. This is it. So I agree we can agree on this issue.
I agree with the mayor that he agrees with us, that we've agreed with them, that this issue is closed for new hires.
No, that's not clear, Madam Court Reporter.
For new hires.
I keep worried about, if you two had come up with the 10 Commandments, I just want to know, would not have been in there?
If we'd have come up with the 10 Commandments, there'd been 5 on each tablet instead of 2 and 7.
Okay. Then what I'm going to do on this, I'm going to have you guys, I'm going to have this written up in the break today. I'm going to have it written up.
Yes.
It's going to be written up in the same format. It's going to have the numbers plugged in this afternoon. We're going to sign off on it. Is that okay with everybody?
That's okay.
By sign off, I mean initial it, TA it, and that's it.
Sure.
All right.
Knowing that, again, we have to reach final agreement to reach all.
Everybody's,
Yeah.
I tell you what, we got so many law degrees here. I promise you what I mean is.
I don't have a law
No,
degree.
no,
I do
no.
not have a law degree.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, nobody,
I want to make that
nobody's
clear right
bound
now.
by any agreement until all agreements are, we all
I
got
get it.
that.
I
And
get
I got it. But for now, new hires has been put
Joey,
to
you're a
bed.
number man, I'm a
And
number
let the
guy.
record reflect, we did that
You
by
know.
what I thought would take till noon, took till about
Well,
10:15. Good job, man.
thank you, John.
Now I want to go back to, governance for a moment. I reviewed y'all's respective proposals for governance, and I'm going to work off of, excuse me a second, because my notes are this way. I'm going to work off of the report of the Jacksonville Retirement Task Force, but also I'm using, at times, folks, I'll try to give you the page, but also at times I will use the summary, just because the summary is kind of the gist of it. We had a number of proposals the other day, and I think, guys, for purposes of our discussion will start on about page 22. That's where I have my first notes on this. And I have banged out some language in a minute that I'm going to share with you all, but I want to go over and see if I understood appropriately the differences. And you guys, again, what I want you to do is tell me if I've missed the differences, because I try to take your differences and search for ways to meld them within each of your stated principles. On page 22, the first one has to do with the Financial Investment Advisory Committee. The good news is nobody's in disagreement about having this committee.
Senator, can I ask you just a procedural question first
Yeah.
before you move forward? So we had moved the task force recommendations
Yes.
as to governance on Tuesday when we first met. I know Mr. Keene had
series of
responded with
support.
approximately 4 of them. Just again, you're monitoring this, so not to substitute our judgment for yours. I think Mr. Keene was coming back with additional proposals. Would it be worthwhile to have him complete those presentations before we move into what you're?
Well, my plan is, I'm going to get to him, but I told him this morning I really wanted to talk about these issues for a moment. Then we'll go to some additional ones, but I want to kind of summarize where we are right this minute.
Gotcha.
And then we'll, if I could, just to see. The good news is that the Financial Investment Advisory Committee, we start off with the fact that we're in agreement to have one. So that's the good news. We start off, everybody's in agreement, the size, the composition, and generally speaking, its purposes are agreed upon. And so I take that as a real strong plus. John, with some exception, basically your language, and correct me if I'm wrong, your language that you introduced in a shorter form than is in the report itself, but it is very similar to the language that you find in the summary of the report. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Before you continue, Senator.
Yeah.
Our proposals were based on the executive summary.
Yeah.
Which is much shorter than the full report that has many more words in it.
Well,
It wasn't designed to do a bait and switch or a trickery move.
I got that. I went back, I looked, I saw the executive summary. I concur that generally speaking, I'm not doing a side-by-side, but generally speaking, that yours reflected a summary. And so I start off with the fact that on that which has been number 1, paragraph 1 with some very small language differences is agreed upon. Paragraph 2 John, as I saw this and I read it, it seems to me that paragraph 2 deals almost exclusively with some requirements for disclosure and transparency for the Financial Advisory and Investment Committee. I know that some of your concerns, because you stated those at the table the other day, some of your concerns were, wait a minute, guys, the more of these things you do, the narrower the field of people who are willing to do it. And I understand that. But I would also say, as I've discussed with both sides, that I've looked at some other boards here in town. I've looked at some other boards in some towns I'm more familiar with. By and large, people who get on boards of any consequence at all this day and age, there's pretty much a requirement for broad-based transparency. And if folks don't want to do that, you may be right. There may be good people who decide not to do it. But the fact of the matter is that I think that generally speaking, especially when you're dealing with something of finances, as you know this would have impact, the truth is that you want to make sure that you don't later find out that somebody has any kind of, golly, we made a recommendation, there was an advice, and we had no idea this person had some sort of a conflict or what looked like a conflict, or maybe even they didn't even consider a conflict, but later would look bad. So the city, I think, the task force, I think, wanted to make sure that if they erred on the side of one, they erred on the side of more requirements for the membership. And finally, the last section was just some general language, which is of section 1, I'm talking about, gentlemen, which I would call paragraph 3 that completes on page 23. That paragraph, again, it kind of talked about just the limitations on the relationship between the Advisory and Investment Committee and the board itself, and making it very clear that ultimately all of the final decisions are fiduciary decisions made by the board itself. Everything else, not to say that it's not to be given weight, it is simply to say that it is what it is. It's advice. It is, like all advice, you can take it all, take some, or reject it all. When I went back, I looked this over, and it seemed to me from the discussions we had that the biggest objection you had, John, and one that I think may be really unnecessary and overstated by both sides, was actuarial practices and assumptions. And I think what you were saying is, wait a minute, I don't believe that we're going to have the advisory committee setting, or that they really are able to set the assumptions, because that is a very highly specified function of an actuary and actuarial practices. Outside that issue of assumptions, I didn't see that there was anything else there that was included that gave you any heartburn. Was there anything else?
No.
Okay. And then on page 2, I think there was some language on page 23, paragraph 3 rather. The only language that I saw that gave anybody any heartburn, it seemed to be, will provide advice and recommendations to the board, which shall receive and act upon such advice and recommendation as the board in its fiduciary capacity shall determine. And I can understand that language seemed to be, does that mean you will act on it? Well, no, it means you'll act upon it if you determine to act upon it, but I did see that maybe that was a gray area that could be addressed. But other than that, all of the rest of this was all about ethics, certifications, and disclosures. And while you had some concerns about those ethics, certifications, and disclosures, your ethics, certifications, and disclosures response was not, I'm against it. I just think it's going to make it harder to get people. But I don't oppose the fact that they've got to have, that there are timeframes they're going to have to meet to make this practicable, and that there are disclosures that we would expect to be made by people who are making recommendations, especially some of which are recommendations about who you hire for various functions. Again, realizing that that's still, in the end, the function of the board. Have I paraphrased your concerns about the remainder of the language right, John?
You have indeed. The fiduciary responsibility for the operation of the Police and Fire Pension Fund is vested in the trustees by law, and it cannot be assigned away or bargained away or given away or shrugged away in any way whatsoever. That an additional financial and investment advisory committee is created, which we support. They are there to give advice, but not to establish policy.
I don't see anybody on the city that disagrees with that. Am I wrong?
No, I don't disagree with it, but
You-
I think it's, I mean, you know, the key word is the actuary assumptions. Those are the key words that John has a problem with. And we're not saying, I know the task force is not saying that, you know, the advisors are going to determine and dictate what the board should do. And that also applies to the rest of the paragraph. So I think, you know, so we're not disagreeing. I think it's just that one piece that you're worried about, and you shouldn't worry about it. I mean,
Okay.
I think we can come to a resolution.
I do too. I just want to make sure I'm stating the problem, because I've got some language I'm going to suggest in a few minutes on this that's very little difference from exactly what's down there. I think it clarifies a couple of things that might get rid of any heartburn. The next thing is the use of the general counsel that we talked about. The use of the general counsel problem is real interesting, because Cindy came in, I should say the general counsel, but she is, as you know, a long-term friend and someone I have great admiration for. And you know, and I will say this, that I promise you her billing practices will change immediately as she takes on the new role she's going into, but.
No, only a little bit, only a little.
But other than that, it's, what I did yesterday receive a call from Bob Klossner and talked at length with him about this issue. And the irony of this, folks, is that y'all are pretty much in agreement. There's not a big kind of disagreement here. For normal, ordinary work that is of a kind that every department undertakes, the reality is that the general counsel's office ought to be used, and frankly, the specialty of Klossner's firm, or whoever, and I won't want to include the name of any particular firm, that shouldn't be done, we'll talk about that, but the fact of the matter is that for now, that is the firm that has been there a long time, and everybody anticipates would be the firm that's there a long time, but it could change at some future date. But the point of how it's used is one in which their specialty, which I think they call pension advice and retirement-related litigation and advice, that is something that they are prepared to do, have been well situated to do, and for which the general counsel's looked at and said not only that they're reasonable in their doing it, but also they're reasonable in the price they charge for doing it. So it seemed to me that the biggest concern here is if it ain't broke, we don't have to fix it. And right now, it doesn't seem like it's very broke. So what you want to make sure is that you're getting that on issues of pension, on issues of defending the role of the pension, because the pension board is there serving the city and everyone else. I understand they all have their various roles, but ultimately the pension board is to protect the people who are the pension members, their interest and the solvency, to make sure the people who are going to get a check now are getting one, are going to get one someday. That's what that board from both sides is about. General counsel recognizes that. Specialty firm recognizes that. It seems to me that we're not very far apart on this, because I can tell you, the Klossner firm says we're not really wanting to do the ordinary everyday work. On the other hand, if we have a severe disagreement with the city over pension-related litigation, pension or retirement-related litigation or advice, that's our role. They have their role, and that would be the difference. But historically, that's not been a huge problem for us. There are times we don't agree. I also was interested that while there's been some issue, he pointed out to me apparently that in the entire time the Klossner firm has been there, you guys have been plaintiffs, meaning the board has been the plaintiff once. The rest of the times.
I mean, including right now in front of the court.
Right.
And I believe you're properly summarized, Mr. Smith. A legal relationship is not something that can be dictated. And I think the task force and the mayor have quite wisely said, let's put together something that ensures working. with all of the consolidated government, all of the arguments we have with the trade bill, all kinds of things, we have never been in a situation where people see the civil council's office as an adversary. We are there, upholding the requirements of Florida back to help the clients, to help the SPS. When you have an excellent firm like Mr. Claus's qualifications, you do that together because you have the same interest, protecting the trust, protecting the individuals who are often under unfair attack in running these things, and that's kind of our specialty, sunshine and public advocacy, things of that nature. So the language that was come up with by the task force is precatory. It's not a directive, it's precatory. It says work together as we work together with every other outside counsel for all these sophisticated businesses. And if you can kind of break this adversarial approach to each other, which seems to be the benefit Mr. Mayor bringing to the table, then if this isn't going to be an issue, this is going to be vote like it is with everybody else. Calling or whatever attorney will be calling, saying, let me run this by you, as everybody else does. I'll call and say, let me run this by you. Our goal is not to litigate with the fund, which defeats the assets from the people who have worked hard and who deserve them. So I'm happy with this precatory language. I don't think we need the amendment. I think that's why the task force language, it says get together work, really accomplishes.
Okay.
Well, and to that point also, and because I promised Mr. Keene I would, I went back and reviewed some of the task force meetings, and it was the 29th of January, he had indicated at the podium that this language was fine when the task force reviewed it. So, again, I think that, as Ms. Lacadera says, it really does take that collaborative approach, and I'm assuming that's why he and Mr. Klausner expressed, willingness to kind of work within this format at that meeting.
I think my point is, I think we can come up with something that everybody can live with pretty easily that's very close to what we have. I know that the next difference we had was on the selection, and I'm not going to spend much time on that because I think that is one in which there's a severe principle of difference. Cindy, I didn't mean to.
No, I'll just sit over there, I'll sit right and I'll take the look at that.
Okay. And so I'm going to skip to number 5, which is qualification for council-appointed trustees and 5th trustee. As it relates to the city putting qualifications on its own trustees or putting minimum qualifications on the 5th trustee, let's parse that out. I'm assuming you don't have an objection to whatever qualifications they put on their own trustees.
No objections whatsoever.
How about?
So there are 2 trustees.
There are 2 trustees. Now let's go to the 5th trustee issue without going how we select it for a moment. Set that aside, because I know your feelings on that. I know how strong those are. City, I know yours. Set that aside for a minute. Do you have a problem with putting minimum qualifications on the 5th trustee? As if the procedure was to remain the same as it is today, if it was, I'm not suggesting it will be, but if it was to remain the same as it is today, would you have a problem with there being minimum qualifications for everybody to know going in as to what the 5th trustee, and those qualifications being persons with professional finance experience, public pension experience, governance experience, institutional investment experience, community experience, and wisdom or comparable professional training, knowledge, and expertise, which basically is a wide range of things which are subject to various interpretations.
All of the 5th trustees who have ever held office since the inception of the pension board in 1987
Would meet all of it.
have possessed those sterling qualities, including our current 5th trustee, former Sheriff Nat Glover, who's president of Edward Waters College. Now, so we don't have a problem with that. We pick people.
Okay.
Because the 2 city appointees have to vote for the person. We couldn't recommend a chair and they're not going to vote for it. So that's what I'm saying.
Then again, it seems
Now,
to me.
however,
Oh, I was so close.
the Attorney General of Florida has an issue with it, and they've issued an opinion.
I know the opinion.
Okay. So, but just leaving that said, and looking at past practice, that always well-qualified citizens of the community have been selected to serve as the fifth trustee, would bode well for future selections. But to do anything other than that, you're going to run contrary to the Attorney General's opinion.
But other than the AG opinion, the concept yourself, of the parties agreeing to what you're saying, and I've known a number of the people, they would all meet that criteria.
Exactly.
And in fact, the practical matter is that everybody that would ever be selected would have to meet that criteria, or they'd never garner enough votes under any procedure.
Exactly. And we would want qualified people.
All right. Now, that's kind of where we left off the other day, which brought us to number 6, which is the actuarial standards. Do you have, I cut you off the other day, do you now have, because do you guys agree that that's where, as far as we got the other day on discussing this, and have I correctly summarized the differences or the issues out of each of those?
Yeah, for us.
Chris, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
All right. Do you have other proposals that it relates to these numbers 6, 7, 8? And of course, I know 9 is really something that we'll probably put off because 9, at 10, 11, at 12, or 13, which are all, any other, because we didn't go to beyond number 5 the other day.
Right.
Let's address number 6 for a moment.
Well, let's see if we can back up.
Okay. I'll back up.
Senator.
Absolutely.
The document we were working off of when we presented our proposals the other day, as I told you earlier, was the executive summary.
I'll go to that.
We are now going to withdraw all of those proposals, and we're going to start with the main report on page 22.
All right.
And are we ready?
I am. The floor is yours.
No. We got a new way of handing these things out today.
John, do you have them in a jump drive by any chance? If you do, Carol's happy to put them up on the projector
I don't have them in.
in electronic format.
I just got finished with these things this morning, Chief. Getting better at tossing them.
You're getting over here.
Watch this, Chief. You can give it to him.
So for folks in the public, we'll have Carol make copies so everyone can have a copy of these.
So she thinks she might be able to put them up there.
Okay. Are you ready to proceed, Senator?
Yes, sir.
Item 1 is recommended by the task force, starting on page 22 of the formal report. Financial Investment Advisory Committee, on behalf of the board, we accept that every word, period, and comma that's in that paragraph. Just take it all. We agree to number 1. Is that good news?
So just, sure.
Is the
just wanna
city
make sure.
agreeing to number 1?
So the language, the exact language that's in the task force report is what you're agreeing to here?
Correct.
Okay, so you're accepting the city's proposal as to number 1?
If that was the words out of the task force report, yes.
What I will do at some point, everybody can do a side-by-side in a few minutes, sure. But the point is that the number 1 has now been agreed upon by the board.
Right.
Go ahead to number 2.
Agreed.
Go to number 3.
Rejected, contrary to state law.
That's the use of the general counsel.
Correct.
Got it.
The mandatory use, the language we gave you the other day, we'll get back to.
I understand. Number 4, we know that one.
Rejected is contrary to state law.
And may I go back and ask a question about number 3? Again, the language on number 3 during the task force process, John, was language you said was, quote, fine. So again, this is a change of
Yeah,
position from that
This
period?
is a change of position.
Right.
And what's the rationale for the change of position?
Our position is that the board, if they want to use the general counsel, we will continue to do that, just like we're doing. We had a case with one of the assistant general counsel's representatives yesterday.
Right.
As I told you the other day, they previously had representatives successfully in another piece of litigation. But the mandatory selection of the general counsel to be our attorney is contrary to the statute.
Well, I don't think, Mr. Smith, I don't read this as the mandatory.
Yeah, I
I mean,
just,
and so.
Whoop.
so is that, that's a change?
Let me do this for a
Can I
minute.
just ask one question?
Yeah, absolutely, go ahead.
I just want to be clear. Are you changing your position? Because this doesn't dictate to say,
What we're saying, Mr. Mayor, is the language we gave the other day on this item more clearly articulates it.
you're clarifying?
Clarifying.
Okay.
It's a good word.
All right.
All right.
Flatline is.
Okay, and, well, don't do that yet. I think maybe we have some other language that's going to be forthcoming here.
Right.
Trying to clarify that relationship a
Okay,
little more
I just-
succinctly. I mean, I'm not telling you not to do that, but I'm just saying, no, don't do it yet, because let's see where we go. And John, what I was going to do for your side, I'd like to go ahead and just, I'm going to let him
Go
go
through-
through everything.
Sure.
Then I'm going to go back one by one and allow opening questions, just because it gives a little more order.
Yeah.
And I want John to go ahead and, I think we are now on number 5.
Hey, why don't you get you one of these whole things? It's all of our positions, so you keep up with it.
Number 5, qualifications for council-appointed trustees and 5th trustee.
We would agree with that, but you have to delete the mayor because that's contrary to the law.
I got it. And number 6.
Number 6. A very long article,
I know that.
as John pointed out. We'll agree to that. In the interest of good faith dialogue and moving forward.
All right.
Number 7, we're going to reject that, but we'll offer you some substitute language at our next meeting.
And that is the future, the selection of future administrator.
Correct.
All right. 8.
We're going to reject that and offer some substitute language, and also point out that would require an amendment to the general employees pension plan by the city council. So we're going to reject that and offer some substitute language.
And number 9.
Number 9, paragraphs 1 through 5 are rejected. Substitute language will be offered. Paragraph 6 is agreed to.
Paragraph 6, the city, and that is the one where the parties will agree to a
Mediation.
master to.
Right, in federal court, right.
I got it. All right. Number 10.
Rejected due to pending legal issues.
Okay. Number 11.
Agreed to with the deletion of the numerical 2014 in 2 places, and we will add the language, the meetings will be in accordance with Article 2207B of the city charter and paragraph 32 of the restated agreement.
Okay. I'll have some questions about that. But that's okay. 12.
Further discussion is going to be required.
And
Does that mean there's likely to be substitute language, or is that just teeing it up for future dialogue?
Future dialogue, Chief.
okay. 13.
Doesn't involve the pension board at all. It requires city action to create the same type of financial board for the general employees and correctional officers. So that would have required no action on the part of the police and fire pension fund board.
Do you have any objection to those actions, though?
Oh, we would think the task force thought it was a good idea for the police and fire, and they thought it was a good idea for the general employees, but that's a decision that
Right,
the
but.
city
but
people
do
need
you
to
have a
make.
problem with this?
We don't have a problem
Okay,
with it
so
doing.
we're fine, okay, I think just clarification.
Okay, that's
Just
fine.
clarifying.
Yeah, I figured you, because I think you
Okay.
suggested to Mr. Shai that we
Sure.
got to do it for both
Sure,
boards, so I
sure.
figured you'd be
Yeah,
supportive of that.
and,
All right.
and all we're saying is this, it's not an action the police and fire pension board can
Right.
take. This is an action
get it.
that only the city and the mayor, you say you support that, correct?
And the general employee pension fund is not a big difference between having the CFO on the board.
Yeah, it's totally different.
So I think we'll look at that.
Yeah.
Well, let me just go back and
That
make,
concludes our revised
John, and I
presentation.
want to thank you. That is a lot of work that has been done in a short period of time. And more importantly, a lot of this has made some of the issues that we just squared away, I think. Again, I wanted to make sure before that, that's why I wanted to do this before you went forward. Paragraph number 1, subject to, I understand everybody going back and giving it a read-through, but paragraph number 1, which is a long, the first 8 pages, which is also several, I think pages 22, 23, and 24, and into 25 of the, that's agreed upon. And subject to read-through, pending review. I want you to TA that for the city pending review.
May I just, in terms of logic, if it's all right with Mr. King, we can just convert this to a Word document, one as is,
Okay.
and then have an initial thing, and then have an.
I'm fine with that. I just want to make sure that I don't want later to pull things back.
I get it. I think Ms. Langadere is right. What we ought to do is, we'll review kind of where we are, we'll
All right.
review the language. I think once we've done that, we can sort of talk about.
So, but I'm putting it on the record then that we're pending TA on this article because the parties are in agreement that the Financial Investment Advisory Committee language is satisfactory to both sides.
Correct.
We agree to that.
Good. All right.
Thank you, Mayor.
Use of the general counsel, we've got to do some work there. Selection of the JPFP board members.
Senator.
You now
Senator.
got number 2.
About number 2?
Yeah, the
Did I
ethics
skip one?
certification and disclosure
Did I
requirements.
skip one?
Again, same as number 1, pending number 1. There appears to be acceptance of the city's proposal on that, pending review of the language that's been provided. So what would be paragraph 2 of the,
Yeah, I
Page
just put the
23.
8, I went through pages 1 through 8. I read this together. Those are 1 and 2. You're right.
gotcha, okay, I just wanted to be clear for the
Yeah,
record.
those are 1 and 2. The first 8 pages, which I think are pages 22 through 25, and that,
Mrs. Smith, I want to make sure that we're not, because this is clearly a compromise for people's conditions, not positions we're taking in court. So I'm not requiring any concession in that they must use the office of general counsel. I think as trustees looking out for fiduciary interest, which is what Mr. Keene is doing, that the precatory language saying work together is sufficient, that we both have a goal. So I'm not requiring, I want to make clear, John, I'm not requiring a concession that you're obligated to use this, because this is a compromise. That's the concession, that's what I get in court, not here in the settlement. And so in here, I just want the framework is to work together as we have started to do behind, so that we can break down these barriers and do what we do best. We all of our officers, which is preserve their funds. So I just, because when John was saying the law doesn't require it, that's it. I want to be clear, I'm not saying the law requires it, I believe it does, but I'm not requiring that concession in here. Mr. Mayor has freed me up from that to work.
Yeah, and
together
Mr.
with them.
Smith, I mean, that's why I said for clarification, John, I mean, I just think, we're
guys,
not-
we're going to get over this hump.
Okay.
We're going to get over this hump. This hump is not, I've got 2 people that both have a vision that I think we can live with. I think we can draft some language that's going to get us past the hump, and we're going to get where we want to go on that. I understand. So pages 9 and 10, we have to address. but I'm going to address that, we're going to address that before this day is done.
Now, hold on just a minute, Senator Smith. Let me make sure that everybody understands where this document came from I just handed out. It came from Carol. She emailed it over to us. We copied it down and just put it in bigger text to help myself and other people who are visually impaired.
Which particular document?
This whole document. She sent it to us,
Oh,
right?
the one, you mean, you've given the task force report that's
Right.
posted online?
We got it from Carol.
Oh, well, thank you.
And that's what this document is. Oh, yeah. We don't need anybody to start doing a lot of typing here.
I got it, we just want
I got it.
to, we want to review it.
Yeah.
I got it.
The wheel's invented. We
No,
just
we
want to
got-
roll it.
All right. Now I'm on page 11 of your proposed language, and this is the selection, and I really want to spend a lot of time on this. This is that your position is, that the board's position is that the 2 and 2 selecting 1 is the position that you support and will stay with.
Correct. It works in
And-
382 other plans in Florida.
I understand, and the mayor's issue is, you know, that.
We understand.
that You understand that the mayor's saying, well, you know, I'm the one who's not, I don't have the ability to put anybody on the board that's making these decisions that are critical and for which people look to me. I understand all that, so we know that's a difference, so I'm gonna just skip that for a moment and go to, and so, as I understand 5, 5 is, all you're saying is, we accept the task force report on number 5, except we don't agree with the mayor having an appointee, but we agree that as to the council-appointed trustees and as to the 5th member, we're okay with this.
Correct.
All right. Number 6, which is a long and complicated, and I was going to have a bunch of questions on, but
But
now.
we're coming back to,
We're going to come back to all these. I'm removing stuff right now. Number 6, subject to y'all's review and reading of 6, which is a lengthy, and to put this in perspective, is pages 25, 20, and 26, almost to the three-quarters of the way down on page 26 of the report. Board accepts. And that would be pages 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. That one is agreed upon, subject to your reading it, subject to, but it's off. The selection of the future administration, you are going to offer proposed language on that. You have not completed that, but you intend to offer a proposal for the selection of future administrator, chief investment
At the
officer.
next meeting.
All right. And the same for the future administration of the JPFPF. And is that, so that I get this straight now, ladies and gentlemen, that's the one that will deal with the methodology for the closure of the current plan
Correct.
and a substitute for the plan for future incumbents.
All right. Task
And-
force recommended that the future people be put in the general employees pension
And you,
plan.
and you have an alternative,
We
you
have an
think that
alternative
works
to
to
that.
that? Okay, I understood that. And then number 9, I've always taken the position that number 9 will be something we deal with after we've dealt with everything else, because it encompasses kind of the terms of the agreement and how we will state those.
But
number-
we did accept paragraph 6.
I saw that, which is the
The
monitoring, I understand. Return to collective bargaining, rejected due to pending legal issues. I got to ask what pending legal issues, is that the federal case that's pending, or is that the, I don't,
We have a settlement agreement that runs to 2030.
the 30-year agreement?
Correct.
Okay, but I'm not trying to be coy and get anybody, I just want to make sure I understand what is the, what you're addressing here, as I understood it, and I have understood the problem, is we do not concede that the pension board does not concede when the return to collective bargaining should occur or not occur. That you think will be determined by either the unions and the city through collective bargaining, I guess. I mean, I'm trying to say, is there something about the current lawsuit in federal court, which I have not looked at recently, but as you know, I've read all of the materials in the past. What about this do you think is going to be affected by the outcome of the pending legal issues? What about this proposal? All of it or some of it?
We have a contract
Okay.
that runs until September 30th of 2030. And we, our members, current active members, retired members, have put hundreds of millions of dollars paying for benefits going forward that are going to have to be protected. And so we are willing to make some changes to the 30-year settlement agreement.
Right. That's what I was getting at.
Tossing it out is not something we're going to do. And there was an issue with part of the city proposal. They want the members' contribution to increase, and the city contribution, the enhanced contribution as recommended by the task force, would be there if the city council put it in. But if they decided not to put it in, where does that leave everybody? And that's the question that, we're at.
That's an issue we're going to discuss, which the one is, what happens if appropriations doesn't occur? I mean, everybody here knows that's got to be discussed. What I'm getting at, John, is you corrected me the other day, and I think right, that I believe you told me 9 times the 30-year agreement has been amended by predecessor mayors, predecessor councils, all that. What I'm asking you is, is it your vision that what we do here, if we were to reach agreement, and if it were to be passed by the procedures the city requires, which would be council acceptance, if that happens, would that be, in your view, an amendment to the 30-year agreement?
Correct.
The task force actually made some recommendations, and for instance, the 80% funding threshold that could occur earlier than 30 years to inure to the benefit of the members. Is the 30-year agreement's termination date also something that can be changed?
That's something we can work on.
Okay.
It has to be the protective language for the hundreds of millions of dollars that have been poured into prepaying for the benefits.
No, I understand and see if I'm getting, because I don't want to be missing this. One of the questions you're raising here, and one that I know that's going to have to be fleshed out here, what would happen in the event, because under this there is, and I think your side pointed out the other day in your proposal, that you cannot lock in future councils by, and I don't want to give the wrong language, but you can't lock in future council action by your action. What I want to be understood, and I think maybe it goes to the heart of this issue, what John is questioning and what the board is questioning, and I think rightfully, what do you perceive, and any of you may just defer this or you can respond, what would happen on an occasion or in the event that appropriation was not made by the city?
I think it is premature to address that, and I think when we get to the subject of unfunded liability, which is one of the issues defined, that's the appropriate time to talk that through.
But you agree, I mean, he's raising it here to it, but you agree to it that there is an issue that has to be resolved to the board's satisfaction on the issue of, okay, what happens if there's not an appropriation made? What happens to?
I think, again, I really think I think
Okay.
we've got to defer that to the subject of unfunded
Got it.
liability. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think I'm misunderstanding. I don't think the cost and correctly that the pension fund is saying that they are the collective bargaining unit.
They're not.
So all we're doing is preserving the rights of the union that they have under the Constitution, because there are people here that we have not hired yet, right? And they're under this new pension plan, And of course, there's no fiduciary responsibility from the trust for new hire police people who aren't presently members of the trust. So as to those new employees, if we do not preserve the right to collective bargaining, 3 years from now, they have no right to bargain a better pension. And so I think that it's a material thing. It's not part of the trust present fiduciary duty because they're not members of the trust. And I think we need to be clear that that issue of collective bargaining lies with the elected certified members of the collective bargaining unit.
I never, John, there was never any misunderstanding. You've never contended that this session we're involved in, these agreements we're involved in, are collective bargaining or even a substitute for collective bargaining.
No, absolutely not.
Right.
On the record, we positively
Said
stated
that.
this is not a collective bargaining issue.
Well, and even while the task, just again, to add a further layer of clarification, while the task force recommended entering into or amending or restating or creating a new agreement, however they phrased it, they were very specific as to the components of that agreement and very specific, as indicated in their governance recommendations, as to how the determination of future benefits should be handled, which was through the collective bargaining process. Their recommended agreement was as to issues of governance, payment of the unfunded liability. So I just think it's important, Senator, to kind of make sure we've got that distinction on the record, because they were very clear about drawing that distinction.
Is it, from the city's perspective, and from, is the discussion of collective bargaining and an agreement relating to collective bargaining something that the pension board either should do or is even should be concerned with?
The city's position is that the pension board is not the proper entity to collectively bargain.
Of course.
The city, they have certified bargaining agents, that is the Fraternal Order of Police and the Jacksonville
Police and
Citizen
fire,
Firefighters.
right.
And for that matter, the city's position is that there's an inherent conflict
Of course.
in the board, both administering the corpus and the investments of the fund, and at the same time negotiating benefits. Hence the proposal the city made on Tuesday to redefine that relationship.
And hey, Mr. Smith, you're correct in pointing in on one point. Collective bargaining is a provision that belongs to the agreement of the police and fire pension fund.
I'm having
I
some.
just wanted to clarify.
I'm just telling you, this is only my raising a question. What little expertise I ever had under Chapter 447 has long since been forgotten and was questionable even when I claimed it. But what I would say about it is
I
that
recall that.
I do now get the issue here, and that is whether or not the subject of collective bargaining even needs to be commented upon by that pension board, because the pension board plays absolutely no role, and I think Chris actually said it even more eloquently. There are circumstances by which you might even find that was a conflict for them to be. Okay, I understand that. All right. Next page is 26, consultation among the parties. The city and the JPFP should consult on relating to the performance. Agreed, but with deletions of 2014 in 2 places. You agree to the language, but you want 2014 out. Tell me why. I hope that doesn't mean because it ain't happening until 2015. That's very discouraging to my calendar.
No, because 2014 in this particular paragraph refers to the new agreement the task force recommended previously to call it the 2014 agreement. Striking 2014 in both of these places, we now refer to the agreement we currently have between the pension board and the city that runs to September 30th of 2030.
And could I just question this? Would this be, from your perspective, would this be the 2014 amendment to the current agreement? Is that what it really is?
It would be Amendment 4 to the restated agreement once we reach.
But other than that date issue, and
That's all that
how we
is.
characterize it,
That's all.
you agree the rest of the language is
Oh,
correct?
yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right. Yes, you had a question on it?
No, sir.
No, I think we
Apologize. Expression by charter and ordinance, the city and JPF, this is page 27 of your proposals. The city and the JPFP should agree to articulate the recommendations of the task force by supporting and promulgating the 2014 agreement, by supporting and promulgating appropriate revisions to the charter further discussion required. Tell me what that's about.
The fifth trustee is one of them.
All right. Okay, if the fifth trustee issue wasn't there, then this language is acceptable?
And you wouldn't need nothing to go to the charter.
Okay. And same thing about application of general employees and correctional officers' pension plans.
We discussed that earlier.
Okay, I got it. Okay. Now what I thought I would do is, just for a couple of minutes, and again, I want to reiterate, you've done a lot of work here, and a lot of things have been removed, and from our discussions. Chris, I'm going to put it back on your side for some questions now.
Just a quick initial question, so procedurally. So John, these items, number 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, just make sure I get them all on the record, 10, 12, 10, 11, 12, and 13. These were initial proposals the city made where you put a response, and the response is sort of in bold. That's either a rejection or further. This is the position of the PFPF Board of Trustees, the position that's in bold below. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that's the board position. All right. Just want to clarify.
Okay.
The previous, further clarification, Senator, the previous documents we distributed last meeting on the first floor, which we described as the abbreviated version of the,
Gotcha.
withdraw all of those.
Okay.
This is
So-
now our proposal.
So,
Okay, go ahead.
which means
We're on the
the
same track.
change, we're on the same track. The
I got it.
information you provided, it's gone. This is the replacement.
I got it. Okay, I have a, if I could, well, I don't want to cut anybody's, do you have any further questions of anything we've gone over this morning? Because I want to address something.
I do not at this time.
Anyone else on y'all's side, any other? I have, could I didn't know I'd get to this quite as quickly as I'm at it. Give me just 1 second, folks. I brought something with me I would like to have us look at and see if I can get one more thing off the table today, this morning. Can I have 1 second? Last night, and I apologize, well, actually, I don't apologize, I'm thrilled. We got through some stuff this morning faster and some issues faster than I had thought we would. So I have a proposal that I'd like to talk to while Cindy's here on ways that we might be able to fix this general counsel thing that I think capture some of your all's expressed concerns. And if not, we can work off of that and see if we can get that thing done. Because if we get that thing done, that really means we've put a significant amount of our differences to bed on governance. So if you could just give me a minute, I thought I wasn't going to get to this till this afternoon, but we're moving at warp speed, and I'm not complaining about that.
We thought we were going to get a longer lunch period.
Let's try to get. Let's see if we can't get this done real quick. Take a look at it and see if it may be something you guys take your breaks, look at, come back and say, here's where you missed it, here's where you got it. But
This is on the general counsel.
just on the general counsel thing, which is really, if you follow where we are, kind of we've got 1 and 2 put to bed, so this is 3. So I thought we'd go back and see if we could get 3 put to bed before our lunch break.
Gotcha.
Or really close on it. And I apologize, I just didn't think we'd get to it this morning as quickly as we have.
Why don't you take a recess? She's typing down every word you're saying.
You get paid by the page. You get paid by the, well, and I'm not sure what the rules are for.
Exactly, that's
I
why I
want to
hit
make
stop.
sure everything's,
I don't want to, I'd rather write in there than not write.
Well,
Rod's gonna have a heck of an errata sheet to complete when this thing is done. So, yeah.
well, one of the most discouraging things is watching what you think you said and then reading how it looks on paper later. Gosh, I thought I was much more articulate.
Darrell left the deposition yesterday at the end. You know, I always waive reading and signing. I got to thinking last night, I think I gave him a wrong date. I need to get Bill to call that lawyer and tell him we're agreeing to that, so he can send it over. I believe it was the wrong date. Yeah. Okay, whatever. Yeah, but you know, he's such a, he said to send you his best greetings. Yeah. Yeah. But I did very good yesterday. I didn't even speak a word. But I was telling.
I was gonna say, Bill said there was a perfect definition of essentially, yes, no, I don't think so. The entire time.
Yeah.
So if we get through that, if we could get through this meeting, we're done through 1, 2, 3, and 6. And essentially done on
The lawyer was answering some questions that he had.
Okay. Had a request for a 10-minute break. We're going to stand in recess for 10 minutes. She'll bring this back. I'll have everything ready to do this. Please come back exactly in 10 minutes if you can. I'd love to get one more thing off the table this morning, or certainly get ourselves focused on getting that done.
Too late,
She's
Oh,
back.
great.
Okay. All right,
Okay.
even better.
10 minutes, we're there.
Please ignore the X through. I made various changes. This is working off of, John? What I did last night, and I honestly, if there's typos, it's not anybody's fault, because this is something I had put together last night, and just as you can already see, that this was part of a longer proposal that dealt with. Oh, did I miss you guys?
We got it.
Did you get one?
We got it.
Oh, I got plenty. All right, what I did last night, I tried to, after having listened to what Cindy said the other day, having heard kind of talk with Bob and his concurrence with the kind of everything Cindy said, really. I mean, it was just, so what I was trying to do is perhaps come up, did I not get one to you? Okay. I tried to come up with something that I thought maybe would work, and stated less, and see if it would work. And this is what I came up. While the charter gives the JPFPF the authority to employ separate counsel, the JPFPF should use the Office of the General Counsel of the City, which is the OGC, for its ordinary legal needs. The JPFPF should meet and consult with the OGC should it find that the JPF needs additional or separate counsel for specific purposes, including the nature of the work and the fee arrangement. The city and the OGC recognize that the JPFPF has and will continue to have the need for separate counsel with expertise in pension and retirement-related advice and litigation. The OGC and the JPFP are in agreement that the current fee arranged with special pension counsel is reasonable and appropriate. The OGC and the special counsel shall consult regularly to assure that the legal needs of the JPFP are competently and efficiently handled for a reasonable fee. I don't have any pride of authorship. I did a couple of things here specifically, so that this is on the record. I think the world of Bob Kloster. I just thought I would probably take out the name of a specific firm, because then later we go back and but this should not be read as anything other than anticipating that the relationship with Bob would still, his firm would continue, because I talked to him as I listened to you about these issues. I thought maybe this simplified it and caught the spirit of what you guys were trying to do, but I don't know that but I just a starting point.
For Mr. King, let me stop for just a bit to provide the police and with a little more flexibility.
Okay.
And so the JPFPIOs fit on there.
Me too.
I would actually should put generally used.
Should generally, okay.
And that way, it establishes that cooperation that we really do have with outside counsel for other people and requires us to get together and sort what is really within their expertise and what's really within our expertise. Because what we find generally is that we end up helping each other, which is what we've done over the years with Mr. Klausner. So I think that might assist in moving this issue along.
And I think the word "on" ought to be, by the way, on where it says "in pension and retirement related," it should say "on pension and retirement related advice and litigation."
Yes.
It just reads better.
Yes. Thank you.
John, any thoughts about this?
Interesting.
Okay, good. Chris, same question. You guys want to take and look this over, and we kind of address this?
Review it, yeah.
Uh,
Thank you for the effort you've
Yes.
put into trying to craft new language. I just think we need to review it.
Okay, what I'm going to suggest we do then is, I think we've had a good morning session. What I'd like to know, we're supposed to come back this afternoon at 2 o'clock. Let's start with this at 2 o'clock. John, are you going to have any further of your proposals for this afternoon's session? You talked about some further ones will be forthcoming. I think you'll have them for this afternoon.
I really want to have lunch before I have to
Oh, I understand
go
that.
back to writing.
Okay,
No,
okay. That's fine. You've presented a lot this morning. City, this afternoon, I'd like you guys to be prepared to respond to the open issues that he has responded to, and anything else you wish to go ahead and move on the table, because I want to reiterate, we're off the board now on retirees and new hires. We're on the board on governance, design, I don't know if that's the same or separate, but
It's
they're
governance.
related.
It's governance.
And current employees. That's where we are. So that's what we ought to be talking about, picking up this afternoon. I'd like to start, my plan is, come back and tell me what your problems are with number 3, because if we get number 3 out of the way, we've got 1, 2, 3, and 6 off the board. We're going to talk a little bit more about a package deal that might remove a lot more governance that I have some ideas on. But with that, we're going to break and reconvene this at 2 o'clock. And if somebody will put on the door in case somebody comes in the next few minutes to reconvene at 2 o'clock. Okay, thanks, folks. I'm on my cell phone for everybody. Everybody's got my cell phone. I think, if there are any questions you have about
I have a 1 o'clock with Judge Schlesinger.
I want to return now, because I think where we left off is that I gave everybody a chance to take a look at, I had proposed some language on the use of the Office of General Counsel, which I kind of shared with everybody. I know everybody got it in front of them. It was kind of the second half of a page that was numbered 5. Disregard all the numbering and stuff, because that was for my own work that I'd done yesterday, just putting some things together. Have you guys had a chance to review that? And if so, I'd like some comment on it and what your concerns or thoughts are about it. It's the one that begins, while the charter gives the JPF the authority to employ a separate counsel, they should use the office, and then I, at the recommendation, should generally use the Office of the General Counsel for its ordinary legal needs, and then goes on. I'll start off with the city.
Sure, and I'll ask Mr. Chapman just got here. So I believe we are comfortable with the language as you have proposed, Senator Smith. Darrell, do you have any other, this is related to the use of the OGC.
Thanks, sir. On behalf of Cindy and the General Counsel's office, the language is good. I think Cindy's biggest point was just to make sure that the Police and Fire Pension Fund understood that it is a cooperative relationship. We intend to represent the piece of Police and Fire Pension Fund just like we would any of our clients, and that it's not an obligatory situation. It's a matter of making sure that our lawyers do what you need to have done, as well as every other client for the City of Jacksonville.
So
And,
I'm sure Senator, we're good with the language.
And there's nothing in here that requires anybody to do anything. It just basically requires you guys to meet and consult, and basically, as I told John and everybody else, I mean, I'm not taking Bob Klossner out of this. I put in there the city recognize, and they have and will continue to have a need for separate counsel with expertise in pension, retirement-related advice, and litigation. And everybody recognizes that. They're in agreement that the current arrangement and with special counsel is reasonable, appropriate, and that they will consult regularly to ensure that they are being competently and efficiently represented at a reasonable fee. Any thoughts on it, John?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We have a revised proposal,
Okay.
which
Thank you.
we're going to have it put up on the screen. We move further into the
Thank you, sir.
technology era. There you go. That's correct. We propose the good words you worked on over the weekend, Senator Smith, but as we demonstrated Tuesday in our proposals and counter proposals, we believe that the use of less words is better. Too many words, people can go straying. So we would propose, while the charter and state law give the Police and Fire Pension Fund the authority to employ counsel, we will consult with the Office of General Counsel should it find that we need additional or separate counsel for specific purposes, including the nature of the work and the fee arrangement. And we'll be glad to discuss that.
Yeah, and let me go to this, because as I look at this, I was a little surprised in one way, and once again, I don't want to get into authorship here. What I was trying to do was to make sure that it was already clear, and that was why the language, actually the other language was pretty straight out, whatever, but the city and the GC recognize that the board has and will continue to have the need for separate counsel with expertise in pension and retirement-related advice and litigation. I thought that was kind of I was really trying to say that that's kind of, everybody's in agreement that you have needed that, you will continue to need that, and they recognize the need for that, and have that stated, so that they're really, we'll consult about it from time to time, but there's no question that the general counsel and the board were agreeing that for 25 or more years that you have and will continue, have needed it, and it's anticipated you will continue to need your special counsel. The only thing I did different there was I didn't want to put a firm in, and I've already explained that, just because that could change over time with different people in different circumstances. And I know Bob Klossner both well, and I know 25 years from now he won't be doing it. But I'm okay with whatever language you have there. Is there anything about the other language that bothered you or was bothersome to you, other than apparently, as I tend to be, maybe it's wordy as you suggest?
Yeah.
I just thought that you ought to, I thought it was in the best interest of the board to go ahead and have it stated that it has been recognized and is continued to be recognized that you will have separate counsel for expertise in pension and retirement-related advice and litigation, because that's historically what you want. The ordinary. And I thought that Cindy's language, you generally should use the office for ordinary legal needs. Ordinary, I wanted to make sure everybody understood that did not include pension and pension-related matters. That's something you have always had your own counsel and would continue to have your own counsel. I thought that was actually more protective than this, but it's up to you.
Well, we believe this, Senator, with all due respect, says the same thing, but in much fewer words.
Okay.
Your proposal could be construed that the general counsel is first and our pension and litigation counsel could be second. We want to make it clear, and that we have it up on the board here, that the statutes clearly say that we can employ independent legal counsel both in 175 and 185. We work very closely and harmoniously with the city on many issues, aside from legal issues.
Okay.
But when it comes to the clarity of it, creative people could look at your words and say, well, the general counsel is the counsel, and they may need outside counsel for something else. And then other creative people come in here and says, well, the charter says you only can hire outside counsel if the general counsel tells you it's okay. That's in the charter right now. We don't want to get caught in any such mud pit such as that. So this, we think our number 3 is much less wordy, but does the same thing. And hopefully you agree.
Oh, honestly, it doesn't make any difference to me, so it's over here.
Sure, and John, this is just, again, for our own clarity. Previously, again, back on January 29th, you had indicated to the task force that the language that they proposed, which is what we put forward as a proposal yesterday, where we used the general counsel, was fine. And that was language, I believe, was worked out between Mr. Klausner, Ms. Lacataire, and perhaps yourself. Is it now, are you now saying that the board's position is that that language is not acceptable, the language that was previously represented to be acceptable, and instead the acceptable language is what you've just presented us?
I'm representing that to you. Yes, sir, Chief.
Okay. All right,
Senator, if I may.
what says the, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Understanding that there's a concern specifically for dealing with pension advice and specifically with how you engage your specific operations as far as dealing with not only pension, but your operations overall. Wasn't there a thought at some point in time, sir, that while we were all working towards making sure that your overall welfare, your employment situations, your garnishment of fees, that there are certainly a number of matters the Office of General Counsel could assist you with since we're here, since we are in Jacksonville as opposed to any other firm that may be remote?
No question about it. It's, the Office of General Counsel is one of the largest law firms in the city of Jacksonville, staffed with very competent and qualified counsel under able and capable leadership. Did you hear that?
I did that.
Okay. And we have a cooperative working relationship with them.
It seems, and maybe I'm misconstruing this, but the issue boils down to special counsel for pension advice that the pension fund receives. Is that really the difference that we're talking about?
Correct. And maybe we can wordsmith this
Yeah.
around some more and come up with something else.
The reason why I'm bringing that up is because we currently have ordinances that provides for the general counsel's authority, which provides specifically for special counsel for benefits included, but employee benefits.
Right.
Perhaps that's a way we can work with the language to get something a little bit more tighter, but still get to the ultimate point that the other matters would come to the general counsel's office. But when it dealt with specific issues, maybe we could wordsmith that to bring out exactly what it is you're trying to make sure you have specialized counsel for.
Good plan.
And so is that, so again, just so I'm clear, your concern, John, is that you're concerned that Senator Smith's language that we talked about this morning does not preserve the ability of the PFPF to hire, say, special pension counsel if it needs to?
No, sir. We believe that the worthy moderator's words could be construed that the general counsel is first in line and is our lawyer at all times unless the general counsel's office agrees that we need special counsel, and then with their approval we could go out. That's contrary to the statute.
So you basically saying you want the pension board to have the option up front, no matter what it is.
That's right.
It doesn't matter.
And
the counsel is second. I mean, that's what you're saying.
Right.
Right? You're saying general counsel second, our option, whatever it
Right.
is first.
Right.
Okay, I mean, it's,
And that's what the law says.
I think in terms of the decision that Mr. Chapman for, I think in terms of addressing the concerns with which we have no objection, we would agree on the board's right to retain outside pension counsel. We would, usually that is after conferring with the general counsel, because we help to gather firms for you. So it's not, we don't constrain it like with any other client. We say, here's a bunch of firms, take a look at them, and then you pick who you're comfortable with, because we know they're all qualified. So we can certainly confirm that, because we cannot provide a high degree of specialization in pension, and we don't purport to. And so we could clarify that sentence while leaving, the rest on the day-to-day needs in conjunction with that counsel, because you always have to work together. That we could do.
Yeah, and let me add to that, obviously, if I didn't say it artfully enough, my goal was to essentially retain the status quo of how things work. And that is that, and that's why I used pension-related and, pension and retirement-related. I wanted to give a broad spectrum that, because that's mostly, that probably covers 85% of everything you ever have. It will either be pension-related or retirement-related. I mean, that's what you guys do. But I'm open to any language, I think that does, my goal was to preserve the status quo, which is essentially that you will always have need for special counsel on issues of pension and retirement-related matters. Nobody in the general counsel's office is trying to supplant that role. And so however you want, this language is language that the city could take a look at and react to. And then we'll see if we can maybe as you say, using your words, wordsmith that any other way or accept it as it is. Let me ask you this. I want to switch gears with you for 1 second. I will come back to that, but as it relates to the issues of generally the governance language, and the governance language being the language that kind of is after page 22 of the, and goes on, and much of which you have addressed already by some of your proposals. But I want to ask everybody at the table to take a look at number 8, which is the selection of the future administrator, and number 8, which is the future administration of the JPFPF. As I reviewed this yesterday and last night, and as I have looked at it and thought about it, and I remembered it, in fact, I remembered it wrong. I thought this had already been done. I want you to assume for a moment that the criteria for the selection of the future administrator, while we haven't agreed to that criteria, and I know, John, you're going to have some recommendations on that, but let's assume that the process as designed here recognizes that you're going to have higher and very specific requirements for the future administrator. When I look at that, and then I look at what you're trying to do in paragraph 8, and John, I think you may want to, just for the purposes of everybody else here, because I had you explain it to me last fall, but essentially what you have is you have a retirement plan now that is made up of yourself and there are 2 other beneficiaries.
Correct.
The plan was that was going to be, when I say the plan, the mediated settlement agreement, or however you want to refer to it, was that was going to be done away with and supplanted, and it was either being supplanted by a placement in a general employee pension fund or the equivalent of the general employee pension fund, and I don't remember which. The general employee pension fund requires 25 years to retire, correct?
As a minimum.
At the minimum requirement, I'm sorry.
If you take the DB options, it has both the DB and the DC options.
Okay.
20 years.
Age 55.
Okay. It's a combination of 20 or more years.
20 years and age 55.
Right.
Or 20 years and age, or fewer than 20 years and age 65.
I remember us talking about that last year. The reason I'm raising this, guys, is this. As you raise the criteria by the criteria, the requirements, the minimum, whatever you call it, if it's a series of degrees and experience and all this, the likelihood as you raise that is that people are going to be entering the job or being eligible for selection of the job who have substantial experience both by training and by experience. They're unlikely to be, and I say this complimentary, not with, we're probably not going to see people who can spend 30 years at it or even 20, because you're likely to get people who are coming into the job that are 35, 40 years old when they take the job. I know that we had discussions last year, and as I looked this over and I thought about it, and I know the city has this for some place, that there are options like,
Defined contribution.
how about, and are there 401 plans and that sort of thing that are available for?
It's a 457 plan, but the defined contribution is like that. And Joey can talk about the defined contribution, which is what the millennials are choosing, basically when they come to the choosing of defined contribution.
Well, since I'm nowhere near one of the millennials, I'm far into that other millennia. But my point is that I know that there was some discussion before, and John, I think you have been considering some discussions in the future about that issue of if you raise the criteria and you raise the requirements for whoever becomes the next generation of replacement, the likelihood of that person being somebody who works 20 or 25 years is becoming less and less, and you're going to be competing for people you're going to be competing for people with a lot of experience and who are looking for mobility, because they may or may not be here 8, 10, 12, 15 years. They certainly aren't going to likely be here 30 or 40 years. So what are your thoughts on that, John? Do you think that some of those options ought to be there as part of the, if you're going to supplant the plan you're in, that there ought to be some sort of a plan like that?
Well, one of the proposals was put the future employees in the general employees pension plan. Of course, that takes a change by the city council.
Right.
As to the class of people that are eligible to belong. That's one. But secondly, the board may wish to establish a 401A. The DC plan is always an option, but it's not a very good option for anybody. We're running a retirement plan, and we want the new top guy to have the worst deal of anybody around.
Well,
I mean,
what does
that tell you?
Well, if we're talking, I'm not arguing it. I'm really throwing it out there. I want to get this clear because it was bothering me. If we're raising the criteria and the qualifications, the likelihood is that part of a plan that would be used for recruitment is what is the plan of what is my plan in lieu of being in a 20 or 25-year plan, because you may or may not have people who are committed to a 20 or 25-year plan. I was just wondering, I don't know, I am no expert on various retirement options. I'm not sure I understand my own. But the reality is that a 401A or whatever it is, are those things that are doable out there? And I'm kind of looking at you, Joey, because I know you, are those kinds of things doable? Because they might make the job that much more attractive if we do as you plan, as you set forth in 7 and 8, which is raise the credential requirements, both time and education, substantially.
If we're going to attract somebody for a public pension fund, then the comparable jobs in the retirement plan are public retirement plans. In 2014, 15, and 16, those public retirement plans are not the 3 times multiplier on Wednesday if you retire so you get an extra bag of money. Those are not the plans. So that's the market. If we're competing with the private market, that's a whole different thing. You're not going to win on the retirement plan. That's just selling. And so hence how the discussion we're going to have Peter to do with us in the mediation to go to the market and to get the competition, because that's what's actually going to set the salary, a pension plan administrator. I mean, Mr. Brivey, if I may, got the first one,
He appreciates that.
Raise here.
Wow.
No second today, baby.
You're looking at what other police and fire pension funds are offering and what other cities are offering. And they're not offering that at this point. That's not what people are looking at any longer for compensation, the extra salary.
All right, that was just a thought I had, because I didn't know whether, what I wondered is whether or not, if you put them in a general employee pension plan, or whether or not you're talking about people who, I mean, what happens if you leave after 10 or 15 years?
Get your money back.
Take it with unless you're in the DC component,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is
Okay, all right. I'm not arguing for or against.
Right.
I'm simply throwing out that as we raise, you would all agree that that purpose of number 7, and as it's written, number 7 raises requirements and narrows field of candidates. When you do that, then you are, as I think Cindy says more eloquently than me, you are competing in a marketplace that is some public, some private, some probably of both, but you're also talking about people that probably, the model that you've set may not be replicated, and I say that positively. It's just unlikely that that's going to occur. So I throw that. Any other thoughts on any of the issues that remain open under the governance? Because I want to throw something out for y'all's consideration.
Well, let me just get back here to 7 and 8 for just a minute.
Yes, sir?
I don't just sit in the office. I am the chief lobbyist. I go to Washington. I've testified before congressional committees. I go to Tallahassee. Come over here to the city council, although not near as much as I used to. I am the chief press officer. I'm the chief member relations officer. It's not just sitting in the office clipping coupons and reading the stock reports. We have a very small staff over there. So there's a lot going on. The newspaper compared me to somebody in Tampa. That person just went to work there. And I would agree with what the general counsel said a while ago. You know, everybody wants to make more money, but when you've been doing a job for almost 24 years, no matter where you go, you get more money than the guy that just started or the person that just started. And all that has to be figured into it. When my salary was established by the pension board, we hired a nationally recognized consultant firm who previously did work for the city and other city agencies. So that's where all these things come from. They took into consideration the tenure in the job, and the newspaper wants to talk about supervising 6 people. It's running a $2 billion program. So that's some of these perceptions are mischaracterized.
I'm far from the person who would say that I've always agreed with what was in the newspaper, and I really don't want to get sidetracked here. What I want to talk about is 7 and 8 for a minute.
Right.
7 is a criteria that the task force has recommended. It's not dissimilar to criteria that we had worked on in the, I think what we've been calling the MSA, or the Mediated Settlement Agreement. What I want to know now is, what is your reaction to 7 as it's now proposed by the task force? Realizing that it doesn't have anything to do with you at all. It has to do with a process that will be someday used for the selection of a person who does that very comprehensive job that you've described and that you've done. What's your reaction to 7?
Well, as we told you this morning, Senator, we reject it, and we're going to send you some substitute language, and you task us to do that by the Monday session.
Okay. Are there specific things in there you find more troubling than others?
The general invasion of the rights of the trustees to make this selection. The legislature has ordained that the trustees be solely responsible for the administration of fund and selection of their advisors and people like that. And it's almost like our investment policy got a handcuff on one hand. We want you to make all this money, but you can't invest in this. So, but we'll have some substitute language for you on Monday.
And the same question, yeah, go ahead.
So just so I'm clear, this is very similar to language we agreed to in the mediation settlement agreement. And also, again, at that January 29th meeting, this is language the task force put forward at that point with apparently what seemed to be your agreement. So you're now saying the board has a different position on this language, and hence the substitute language is done?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, let me, and I want to return 1 minute, because there's, believe it or not, there's soon to be seen some method to this madness, and I'm jumping around a moment. On number 10, the return to collective bargaining, I looked and reread this at lunch 2 or 3 times, and I'm so glad Cindy got back in time, because I want to ask this question. Based on what happened in the MSA discussions, and based on what I've read both in the the ruling of the circuit judge, and I realize all that's subject to the First District Court of Appeals, and I'm not making any guesses. I am troubled here about whether or not, and I really kind of want your opinion on this, and I'm not criticizing the task force on this whatsoever, but as I have thought back on it over the last couple of days, collective bargaining is not what we're doing here, and it's not what you do. As a matter of fact, the city, I think, has been pretty consistently saying that even the bargaining of, quote, benefits is concerning on the city side for the board. My point being then, why would we have any language in an agreement between the board, you representing them from now, and the city, Mr. Mayor, your side? I'm concerned about anything that talks about collective bargaining that doesn't involve the people who are the collective bargaining agents, which would be I see the fire here, and I know the police is here. So the police and I've not spoken to any representative in any of them because they're not part of this process on any of these subjects. But it seems to me, and I'm just throwing this out for y'all's discussion, why in the world, and this is what you do for a living, essentially, what does it matter what the board and the city say about collective bargaining? Whatever the rules of collective bargaining, whatever PERC says they are, whatever a court says they are, whatever they are, they are. Whatever the parties agree to or agree to waive is what they do or don't do. But why would this be included in any agreement between you guys now?
That's why we rejected it.
But Cindy, I want.
I think in terms of the meeting of the minds aspect of it, because of prior history, we have contained in here issues regarding benefits. And we're talking about the years ago we have. And the new employees provide the greatest incident of that. And so I think we just need to make clear that whatever provisions are in here as to those pension rights, that those aspects of this agreement last 3 years. And the power to modify those lie with the elected collective bargaining representatives and with the city. So that 3 years from now, the unions have a right to go to their agent and say we want to bargain pensions, and bargain pensions with the city, and the police and fire pension fund doesn't have standing to say, wait a minute, those are mine. And the reason for that is at some point, let's say these changes are made to fulfill the PFPF fiduciary obligations to maintain the trust. That's a different issue than the unions. The unions have a right to this now to come in and say, the world has changed, I want a different pension. And they shouldn't have to, in the city time, be in a position of having a hands tied by a multi-year agreement with the police and fire pension fund.
Well,
So it's a matter of meeting of
but
the
my-
minds. I don't want them to leave here thinking that,
My-
and therefore, who wants to change it, they're going to be able to say, no, you can't. As to the benefits, the rest of the management of PFPF, whatever agreement may or may not be reached on unfunded liabilities, and actuarial report, that's all their expertise. But
my view is, in the language of number 10, my view is my question is, what I should say, but my question reflects my view to a certain degree. And that is, unless the circuit court decision is modified and reversed, the determination of retirement benefits for police and fire shall immediately be resumed through the collective bargaining process. Assume that's, none of that has to do with the pension board. Whether the pension board says we believe it is collectively bargained, not that'll be decided by somebody, but it won't be, why is the board being asked to sign off on something that I don't mean this the wrong way, but it doesn't matter what the board says. They're neither the collective bargaining, they have their fiduciary responsibilities for the pension board. Then there's chapter 447. I'm not saying I don't know the answer, and by the way, nobody knows the answer. You can buy a lawyer who will give you a different answer. Whatever the obligation for bargaining or whatever the pervasiveness of a waiver may or may not be, that's not going to be something that the pension board,
I agree. It's just
their opinion doesn't matter.
Right. This was more just, and
Okay.
agree that language is really far too detailed for certain purposes. We didn't want to be apparent to do anything other than in good faith. And while the rest of the agreement on the management issues would remain, we want to be clear that our position is on the benefits. We have the right to be sitting down at the table with the unions 3 years from now on the benefit piece of it. And so it's more of a meeting of the mind clarification. I agree with you that that language goes overboard and purports to give a right to fund on they're waiting on collective bargaining, and frankly, is not their issue any more than it is the man in the street.
Well, and beyond that, and I know that, and I now understand the circuit court's the only court that's made a decision on this. But I know.
Other than the clerk actually designating a certified bargaining agent.
Right, sure, which PERC would have the, all that's done the way it's preempted,
Correct.
except. Beyond that, we know, because everybody's a realist here, that there is a circuit court decision that's being appealed, and there's also a case that deals with some perhaps affecting issues that remains pending in the federal district judge.
Yes.
Obviously, if I ask you what impact does that have, nobody knows what impact it has, because right now it is what it is. It's a decision that the judge may make, and it may affect this or not affect this, as the circuit judge decision may or may not be upheld. The reason I'm kind of asking these questions is when we're dealing with governance, which we now covered everything, it seems to me that there's a couple of big issues that divide us, and that they are the lock in our way. And I want to hear you, from your perspective, John, the lock that you absolutely believe is blocking everything from getting us done here, at least the big, is that the city's maintaining that they want the fifth person process on the board to change. And you absolutely oppose that, is that correct?
We oppose it because the law opposes it.
Okay. I understand that, but so that we're clear, well, for whatever reason, the board opposes it for every reason.
We oppose it because it's contrary to the statute.
All right.
That's number one.
Now, but there was probably a number two if I asked, or number
There is a
three.
number two.
Yeah, right. But it doesn't matter. The fact is that's your position.
Yeah,
Okay.
Want me to tell you number two?
Go ahead.
Would you put it up, please? There you go. And this is from the 175 and 185. Section 6 and 175.061. The provisions of this section, which above it talks about how the trustees are selected, may not be altered by participating municipalities.
In 1999, this plan was deemed as compliant. What if any effect does that have on that, in your view, John? I'm not saying, once again, in your view, what effect does that compliance?
Well, I can tell you all about it because I was there when the language went in.
Okay.
In 99, they were doing a major rewrite to 175 and 185 that had failed in the two previous sessions. And the reason it failed is because we opposed it. We had competent members of the House and Senate who were responsive to our pleas. One of the provisions in 175 and 185 says that if you work 10 years and are 55, you can get a pension. We don't want anything to do with that. We want people to come here and work a full career. And so we managed to kill the legislation in the 97 and 98 sessions. In 1999, we had a meeting with the other proponents, and they said, much as we're doing here, we know where we want to go, how do we get there? And we said, we have this suggestion. Since the Jacksonville Fund was created prior to the enactment of 175 in 1939, let's put the day before 175 was created, any funds created prior to that were deemed to comply. So we didn't have to do that 10 years and 55 pension. And that's been the law ever since. We have these revisionists that come along and says, well, you're deemed to comply, we can reduce the benefits to 1% and it's still okay. Well, it certainly doesn't say that at all. It deemed to be compliant on that date. But that's our view.
And I'm going to take a wild guess that the other side doesn't agree with that.
If I may, briefly, we've all won problems or arguments in what to have. And legislative history is anything, actual legislative history versus the discussions that was had at the times with the legislature. And many other things have happened since that time, and sea shift. It's the reason why people interpret the same constitutional provision in 1954 differently than they did, 20 years earlier. The little changes around it, and we can apply that skill set in doing it. The long and short of it is, if we pull back because we're arguing about the composition of trustees on a fund. When we appoint a trustee for a fund, I don't know why it matters to the board, but clearly this is an issue of the elected officials showing that they have some aspect of it. We too went up and looked at this issue and looked at specifically because when we saw over the mayor counterpoint, that's when I was faced up. Consolidated government of Jacksonville has always been interpreted differently than others because the legislative body of the governing body includes the mayor as a strong executive function under consolidated government. And we have been basically cleaning up the fact where in previous years they have somehow led the city where the legislature is not including important process for the mayor. So that's all to say that in 175, 185, when we look at it as the unique structure of consolidated government, one look at the intent, and then if we look at consolidated, what we're fighting over a hypothetical person to be appointed under the city's proposal in a public process following a hearing by elected officials. Kind of hard to argue that that person is not going to fulfill a fiduciary duty. So, I'll leave this in your
Understand.
but I just want to see how that. but
Well,
also the issue of
I have
being
a-
able to do the job.
I want to move us out of this governance quagmire and get to, and I have an idea that I want everybody to just listen to for a moment. Probably take a break, and then I want to get a reaction to it. But I think that I have an idea that I'd like to run by you guys. I worked on it at lunch, I worked on it last night. You're my witness. I've written it out several ways and scratched through it several ways. I just want to know this, and I propose this to both sides for your consideration. If items 4 and 10, make sure I have my numbers right. If items 4 and 10, and to be clear, I'm making sure that 4 being selection of the JPFP board members, 10 being the collective bargaining language that we just discussed. If items 4 and 10 were deleted from the proposals, and item 8 was modified to allow a agreed upon retirement option. Would the board accept items 3 as proposed by the moderator, 5 with the obvious language adjusted regarding the mayor, 7, 8, 11, 12, and 13. I'm going to repeat it again. If items 10 and 4 were dropped from the proposal, and item 8 was allowed to be modified if agreed upon as to a retirement option, would the board accept moderators number 3 and the recommendations of the task force numbered 7, 8, 11, 12, 13, and 5 adjusted only for the language which would be affected would be the mayor language. Questions, just ask me the questions about what I'm talking about doing here, and then we're going to probably break and let everybody go talk.
Sure,
think
and one
about it.
quick, just clarification. In our morning session, I think, John, you said that you were sort of agnostic as to number 13, since that required city action. Is that right?
Right.
Okay. And anything is subject to
I
discussion.
didn't, yeah, I put it in because you had made that statement, actually, it's because it didn't matter. But again, it would be 4 and 10 were dismissed. Would the board accept moderators 3, 7, 8, provided there's agreed upon, if there was agreed upon, it could be modified to provide for an agreed upon retirement option, 11, 12, 13, and 5 adjusted only to the mayor's language, because if you did away with 4, you wouldn't have the mayor's language in 5. Now, you may all note that I skipped 9. I skipped 9 because 9 will not really work until everything else is decided upon. And there are, but I also want to throw into this that paragraph 9 as it relates, number 9 as it relates to paragraph 6 has already been accepted. Paragraph 6 has already been accepted by the board. So what I'd like to do is to allow you guys now to take a break if you want to and discuss this and have each side come back and give me your response. Now, guys, this is not the only way to move forward. I'm not suggesting it, but I got to get it moving here. And I've put something out there that I think may give you guys, you may have say, I don't agree to any of it. We'll try to come up with another way to go down the street. But this is a plan that would remove almost all the governance issues. You may have a comeback that is your own grouping of proposals. You may come back and say, yours is terrible, Rod, but I have a group proposal I'm willing to make. Let's try to now take all these outstanding issues and do what we have to do. That is, find a way to see if we can all accept some of it in the effort of moving us forward, because if we got governance off the table, we are then down to only the issue of current employees. But folks, that's not going to be an easy issue. And the unfunded liability. Unfunded liability hinging in part of is governance, and benefits will affect that. So I'd like to now take 15 minutes. Would that allow everybody to go talk about this a little bit, or you obviously make?
Let me just ask a question before we go. Did we decide that the city accept for the new employees?
We handled that.
We already
Yeah.
took care of
Yes.
that.
That was
Oh, that was-
finalized.
That's fine.
Yeah, I haven't gotten it, I have not, you're talking about the early retirement,
No, when we did it this
The whole thing.
we did, but then it was passed around, and I thought your last thing is you were gonna.
No.
No.
Ronnie's going to memorialize it so we can sign it.
I just
But
don't,
we've
I don't have
accepted.
anybody here today to do that, guys.
We're good on that.
Okay.
But for the fact that I'm going to have to get it put together to bring back with me, that's gone. Now,
That's good.
where we are is on governance. I've put out a lumped proposal. I want your reactions. Again, if you don't want me to do this, tell me not to, but somebody's got to get the ball moving here, and this is a real move that you guys can react to, and no pride of authorship. Do not care if you come back with an entirely, but I want somebody to say, how do we get out of this mess and get out of it as quickly as we can in governance and get on to some other issues. If we don't do this, then I'm going to leave governance open and we're going to have to move forward. But I would like to try to get governance off the table and see if we can get down to some more difficult issues, which are going to be issues of a unfunded liability, how we're going to do that, issues of what changes there would be, if any, in current employees, and then the issue of number 9, which is a kind of a wraparound issue of when we get to the end, how are we going to say we wrap it up? So I'm going to say, what time do you have, Madam Clerk? It is 2:48. Let's take till 15 minutes. I'll give you a little longer. Quarter after 3, is that right? Quarter after 3? 3:15, we'll reconvene here. Okay, thank you. If either side wants to talk to me about my proposal, I'm going to be right here. I'm available to come talk to either side, but I will not carry any proposals back and forth. We're right on that. All right. It's a good group. Okay, guys. I think by way of proceeding, I was trying to figure out who'd go first. I'm going to, since neither of you made the proposition, it's my proposition, and I'm asking you to react to it. But it seems to me that I'm asking the board to deal with more items than I am, and I'm asking you guys to drop entirely a couple. I'm going to let the board react first, and then I'm going to have the city react, and then we'll kind of work from there and see where that gets us, okay? Is that all right with everybody?
Okay, sounds good to me.
John, your reaction to the moderators, and I was asked outside, by the way, is it normal for moderators to do this? I said, I don't know. I've never seen this model used before anyway. Normally, I keep you in separate rooms and come talk to you, but this is transparent. So if anybody doesn't want me to do this, I will not do it. I will not make any proposals. I just think it's easier for me to get it moving than for us to sit and wait for somebody to start.
Thank you, Senator. It's fine with us that you continue to make well-thought-out proposals. Concerning the governance, number one, it's our understanding, based on your
Yeah, let me
conversation
back.
with me.
I did, that was a question asking me. Guys, he already had agreed to some things today. I'm not asking, those are already off the table.
Right.
1 and 2 and 6, I didn't address those.
Right.
Those were already agreed to. You agree that those were already agreed upon, and that's why they wouldn't be part of it?
Correct.
Okay, go from there then.
Pending the review.
Pending language, make sure we got it right.
Yeah.
Got it, go.
1 and 2
Those are agreed upon.
have previously been agreed to.
Yep.
Number 3, which I seem to have lost here, but I will find it again right quick.
Here was your number 3, and mine was the moderator's language. Do you want that? I'll give you an extra copy of that.
I had a number 3 a while ago. Tooth fairies. I found it, number 3.
Go ahead.
I'm going to have to confer with Bob Clausen. I'm going to call him this evening. But we're very close to agreement with it. It's, I think, the crux right now of whether the board appoints its counsel and the general counsel's office serves as our local preferred research, revision, helping counsel. But we'll fix with that. So if we could just temporarily pass on number 3.
Got it.
We will get back to it. Number 4 has been withdrawn as our,
It hasn't been, but on my proposal, it is. For purposes of my proposal, it is. They haven't agreed to do that, but I'm just saying if they did, so go ahead. 4 is withdrawn for purposes of this discussion.
okay. I'm not sure, Senator, when you mixed up all my papers, but let me see if I can get them.
I'm guilty of a
straightened
lot
out
of things.
again.
I don't remember that being one of them, but. 5 was the only thing that would be changed on 5 from the current proposal by them would be if 4 was withdrawn, the mayor, of course, language would come out of 5.
Okay, so that means 5 is tentatively agreed upon then, if 4 goes away?
Yes,
And number 6
has been agreed to,
was agreed to this morning.
correct.
I think this is where I caught you mixing my papers up, but now I'm back to number 7. We need to put the words "the board" in here at several places, because the board's the one that's going to be making the selection. Does that sound reasonable to everyone? It's only in here one place right now. It says the executive search firm retained by the board. But,
Other than
for
that,
example, on line 3, after Jacksonville Police and Fire Pension Fund, the board should be governed. We just want to make it clear that it's the board that's going to select the future administrator in 2017 when I move on. Is
okay.
that acceptable right now, or do we want to?
Well, just go ahead. Right now,
I think you should just go through what you're going through, and then we'll
get a
go
reaction
through.
back and
Yeah.
forth. I'll do it that way. You go ahead and tell me your concerns. So one of the things you're saying about 7 is that generally the language is acceptable to you for purposes of this agreement if the board is, it's made very clear to
It's
you that the
clarified
board
to
is
the
the,
board.
is
On number 8 is acceptable when we add the additional words at the end of, it looks like the second sentence after the word general employees pension fund, strike the period, insert a comma, and insert or a 401A at the employee's option, period. Number 9, you
It's not part
deferred
of
on
this.
completely.
yeah.
And that takes us to number 10, which is proposed to be withdrawn.
Correct.
And then we're to number 11, consultation with the parties. We're in constant communication. So that's acceptable to us. And 12, acceptable. And the city has already previously said that 13 is acceptable to them.
Well, except 13's, again, you said you were agnostic,
Right,
so it's
right,
not
right.
a non-issue.
But just because it's on this list.
Right,
Yeah,
13
would not be part of this. Yeah.
13 would be out because you want it out.
Well, and because John says he's agnostic about it.
Okay,
So
that's fine.
It's just not an issue for discussion.
That's
Yeah.
fine. Okay,
That's the pension board's response, Senator, and.
thank you for that, and I know that's unfair to a certain degree to make you move as quickly as that, but I think you did a good job coming back, giving some concerns. Chris or Mr. Mayor, whoever, your response
Just
to
have
this proposed plan?
A couple of questions, if I might, Senator.
Go ahead.
John, looking at number, let me start with, same question for several. Let me start with number 7. 7 talks about the sort of selection of a future administrator. I noted on, I think it was the November PFPF board meeting agenda, that there was some discussion of qualifications of a future executive director post 2017. Can you, I just haven't had a chance to go back, read the transcript or see any of the related documents. Would you mind relaying to us kind of what those conversations were, just because helpful background for us?
Be delighted to, Chief.
Sure.
The discussion you refer to as work being performed by Dr. Herbert, who is the chairman of our Personnel Committee. He's working on the succession plan and the restructuring of our office. He worked on amendments to the job specs and what have you. And that's what that was all about, is for the administrative staff and for the position of Deputy Executive Director that the board has recreated. Had nothing to do with this part, this long-range work that's so far away.
It was unrelated to the job
Unrelated
specs
to
for
this.
the executive director position?
Yes, sir.
Has there been any, again, not trying to get into shade discussions or anything
No,
that's
we don't
legal.
have a shade discussion.
Yeah, but has there been any discussion or action taken by the board as to, for example, the issue that's discussed here, the issue of qualifications or standards or criteria or anything like that?
Not yet.
No action?
But they're familiar with the words from the rejected mediated settlement agreement, and we've had discussions of how we want to try and do it. But, it's so far off and away with
Sure.
so many other pressing things. But
Have there been any proposals made, even if there haven't been anything accepted in the board context, any proposals made as to that subject?
no, sir. We did inquire for search firm after Chairman Shi's committee talked about hiring a nationally recognized search firm, and when we found out how much that cost, we were pretty sure we're not going to use them.
Let me interrupt one thing. I forgot to raise one thing. John, you had raised with me earlier, and at this table earlier, there are some times when the term 2014 agreement is used in this. My understanding is that 2014 agreement, that your understanding of 2014 agreement would be the 2014 agreement as it relates to the existing agreement.
Our use of the 2014 agreement is an amendment to the current agreement.
And does that remain your position?
That's our position.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that,
task
because
force
that
has
language
a
is in there,
different
and I want to make
position.
sure nobody's getting, okay, I got it.
We got that.
All right. Chris, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's all right, no problem. Same sort of set of questions as to number 8, this goes into the question of kind of compensation and pension fund. And this is more of just sort of a substantive question. Has there been sort of are there limitations on the options that the board can offer, either by policy or by law? Just not being familiar with those. I know you mentioned either the general employees pension fund or a 401A type plan. Are there either legal or policy limitations on which types of options the board can offer a future administrator?
The charter says, as well as 175 and 185, says that the administrator will be an employee of the board, will serve at the board's pleasure under the terms and conditions established by the board.
Gotcha. So no, as far as you're aware, no limitations.
None that was another legal issue of the precise use of the word pension plan, and sometimes it's a benefit, sometimes it isn't, actually values out.
Gotcha.
So hence the need to pin this down.
Sure. Gotcha.
Let me follow up on that, make sure, because I got confused there. The administrator has historically worked for the board, is that?
Yes, the only
Okay.
issue here is, for example, on 457 is capped by law, and that's the usually there's an issue on whether there's a legal issue or a dispute about whether the board of trustees can create a pension plan. It is the city's position that if you are a governmental employee, you're either an FRS or you're in the city. But there isn't the ability for any governmental unit to create a separate retirement plan. If you're one of them. The pension fund disagrees with that. We're going to get that. If we don't resolve this, that's the issue that the courts will resolve. So one of the things here, again, without deciding that issue, it's important to pin down what type of plan that trustees could offer, because that's a significant expense. Right? And so all of us could be gone, we won't always have the same Mr. King, we won't have the other trustees, and if we have a really big plan to the detriment of the trust. So it's important to us to say that they cannot create a pension plan. Let's agree today to what it would be. And there are FRS plans, like senior plans, the same thing that our elected city council members are in, with a plan in FRS, so there are plans out there within the government, and I think that the reasons that they're going to pick, the equivalent of 401 for government, which is I think the 457, and the government depends on some of these numbers. But we need to know what that means, because that does become a development.
And John, my understanding of your proposal is that it would be the it would be the future administrator's option to go under your proposal. It would be they would either go into the city general employees pension fund, or a 401A option to be decided by the 401A, the option to be decided by the employee. That's your proposal.
That's our proposal.
Okay.
And
I just don't know what that means, because I'm not skilled in.
We'll deal with that, but I get it. But
once
that.
we know it, we might be fine with it.
Okay.
But we may not, we just need to know
All
what
right.
that means for them.
Okay. Back to you, Chris, I'm sorry.
And John, this is just to make sure we're consistent. Your title, I'm trying to remember, is CEO, Executive Director. We've used the title Plan Administrator, Chief Investment Officer. Do we need to use a different, I mean, just trying to make sure we're clear on, what is, your current title is Executive Director, is that right?
Executive Director Administrator.
Okay, is that your preference? This is, I'm really just trying to make sure it doesn't matter to you.
Just call me on payday.
Okay.
You want to be called too, don't you, Mayor? On payday.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Other questions, Chris?
Let's see.
John, just one question. On 7 and 8, those changes are the reflection of the board's position, correct? Changes that you were talking about, modification.
The board has authorized me to come over here and represent their
Okay.
changes that were under the scope of my authority to come over here and discuss with y'all and take back then for final ratification. Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's fine.
John, another question about article, well, I'll get back to that. Well, let me ask this, and this, I don't know if Mr. Klausner's done this calculation, or if this is, and I'm trying to remember from previous discussions. The last sentence of number 8 says that benefits will be distributed to senior staff pension plan participants after closure of the plan, as if such participants had been enrolled in the Florida Retirement System Special Risk Plan or by the purchase of annuities as permitted by law. Is it your understanding that the benefits in the senior staff plan are identical to those in the FRS Special Risk Plan? In other words, that obviously the FRS Special Risk Plan is a well-known plan in the state. Are those identical sets of benefits? Is one sort of larger or smaller than the other? Do you happen to know? And Mr. Clausen did this calculation at one point.
No, I don't know. This language came from the retirement task force, and they're talking about the distribution, not the amount of benefit. It's how the benefit would be distributed, either by paying a monthly pension or by the purchase of annuities as permitted by law.
Got it. So your
My
position,
memory, though, Chris, is the same as yours. My memory is that this language was from the MSA because there was a calculation that was actually made.
That they were
Now,
very close.
if you're asking me what the result was, I remember this language, maybe you guys looked at it, but I think that language was what you're right. We actually had somebody computed, I think Bob or somebody for Bob came in and gave us that number, but I'm not saying they're the same, but they were so insignificantly different that the task force language on that last sentence, unless someone corrects me, I believe is the identical language we had in our mediated settlement agreement. Is that not right?
it's very close. It's very close, yeah, very close.
Because I know I wouldn't remember this on my own.
But John, it sounds like, is your position today, this is sort of a distribution technique
Yes, sir.
language as opposed to a benefit level language?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And again, that senior staff pension plan participants would be you and 2 beneficiaries.
Currently, yes.
Right.
Skip 9. Yeah.
John, only because we just got this today, and I've not yet gone back and refreshed my recollection as to this particular section of Article 22 of the Charter or paragraph 32 of the restated settlement agreement. In your opinion, and I guess in the opinion of the board, since you're authorized to speak for them, how would that caveat at the end affect the language of number 11?
So that I'm keeping up with you guys, your language in 11 starts the city and the JFP.
Correct.
Right.
And then Mr. Keenan made 2 changes, one striking out the 2014 and adding the caveat of saying that meetings will be in accordance with Article 2207B of the Charter and paragraph 32 of the restated settlement agreement.
The provisions of Article 2207B require that we provide information to the city and we meet periodically. Provision of paragraph 32 of the restated agreement do the same thing, said we will meet periodically. And it was the words that I incorporated in my opening statement to discuss the situation when conditions changed from what was originally perceived when the agreement was reached. But those two citations require that the board staff meet with city officials to discuss the settlement agreement and other items of interest that either party wishes to chat about.
Okay, I think that's all the questions I had. I don't know if others have questions, but all the questions I had.
Guys, anybody else on your side got some other questions? Okay. Well, let me see if I could summarize then. Your answer back, John, in summary, is that if 10 and 4 were gone, and I'm going to read this kind of backwards, 13 is no longer an issue. Everybody agree with that?
Correct.
Correct.
13 is off. 12 would be acceptable. 11 would be acceptable, except you want the 2014 out and the additional language you just read, but the 2014 out being for the reasons that you've stated, which is that it would be the 2014 version or amendment or whatever terms you guys would arrive at. 11, that's the only difference. 8, the only difference that you talked about in 8 was your proposed 401 option. And Joey, I don't mean to...
Technical distribution.
And the distribution, is that,
It's-
did you find the MSA?
Yes.
Is that the same language?
And I have a quote, part of the things on coordinated is going back and forth between documents.
Right.
Give this to Daryl and myself, to give it to the, I put people's notes on the coordination, which is going to be.
Counselor, we're very coordinated.
I'm very uncoordinated.
Going back over, we have been looking at the mediated settlement.
Yeah, that's what I handed you as mediated settlement, and then you want to look at the language.
How that was compared to the distribution plan that is the task force recommendation at the end of the last line of paragraph 8. That's what I'm.
Where it says
that's what I'm
benefit
looking
will be
at.
distributed.
The difference is the language distribution, I'll read it to you expressly. Looking at the task force recommendation that we have,
Is that the task force or the MSA?
That's, yeah, both,
I have both.
that's the task force and the MSA is in front of the members.
What I'm looking for here is, I'm looking at 8. Tell me how it differs from what we had agreed to last November or October, when it was.
the difference is.
May.
Section 8, paragraph 8, rather, the last sentence refers to benefits will be distributed to senior staff pension plan participants after the closing of the plan as if such participants had been enrolled in the Florida Retirement System Special Risk Plan or by the purchase of annuities as permitted by law.
So the word,
It's identical.
it's identical.
It has a word,
Well, the word distribution
Distribution was not
is not included, so we have to include.
benefits will be distributed.
As referring to our immediate settlement agreement last year, it's subparagraph 3, the current senior staff pension will close on or before August 3rd, 2013, and there shall be no further accrual of benefits. Participants in the current plan will receive the plan benefits which the parties have determined are comparable to those of if they had been enrolled in the FRS Special Risk Plan. Again, the one that we did last year was dealing with the level of benefits. However, this language is just dealing with how it's distributed.
Okay.
It's a different function.
All right.
And so we do want to be clear that there's not an obligation to further distribute any benefits.
I guess, I'm kind of,
But if I may, the agreement last year, we were looking at the level of benefits that they would receive, the members themselves. Here, we're actually talking how the benefits will be distributed.
okay. And I know that this is probably, shows me to be way tell me what that equates to in terms of the difference of impact between what the risk, tell me what the difference is on those persons who would be affected between the language we had in the MSA. Obviously, I know that we can't close it by August 2013, that didn't, but what I'm asking is, what is the difference, effect?
We need to know what the level of benefits for FRS were at the time, because basically we were comparing back then, saying that that was how much money the individuals would receive, whatever rate, whatever we were using as the comparator for FRS. Here, we're just saying the methodology in which you're actually getting the distribution. I believe Mr. Keene actually correctly identified whether it's monthly or as a lump sum. So it's a different consideration.
So, actually, John, I think we have an agreement that the FRS standard, the 3% senior administration was the same.
I think we need to go back and just, I think we need to redo that calculation and just make sure we're clear and on the same page on that.
All I'm saying is,
Let me ask this.
John, you're willing to accept, for purposes of this, you were willing to accept the language in the task force recommendation that begins with benefits will be distributed to senior staff pension?
Correct.
Okay. And you guys want to go back even?
No, we're not suggesting that. I just want to make sure we're clear on the language
Okay,
before we agree.
got it.
It's helpful
Got
to
it.
know John's position and his
Got it.
interpretation.
I
but
got
we
it.
just, yeah, that's
All
what
right,
we're trying
we
to
got
do.
it.
Yeah.
And it
Okay.
would be exactly like when any plan is closed. You start paying the people, either lump sum, wash it out, give them an annuity, cash them out in full, or however. Correct?
We have to see, we just have to look at there were three people. And so you typically would have a rollover if you give them either sum or commitment for the payment of those funds. And the trustees, of course, would have to see which is to their advantage without being too disadvantaged.
Sure.
The city's not receding from its position of the language. You're just saying we need to see the impact of that.
We just need to make sure we're clear on the impact of that one.
But both of you, at least at this point, are satisfied with the language of the task force recommendation. You just may need to.
Yes.
I got it.
That's
All right, go
correct.
ahead. Okay, any other responses from you guys? Now, one of the things, Chris, I have not asked you, or Mr. Mayor, whoever wants to respond to this, at the heart of this deal, to make it work on this language, obviously, is 10 and 4 would come out of the package. If John has now given you back his reaction, I expect you to take some time to talk about those reactions, but the reactions were fairly mild. There's the 401 possibility, which we talked about earlier today. There is also which I think I'm the one who actually raised that, because I remember from conversations last year. There's the 2014 language, which we're going to have to come up with some definition of 2014 at some point. It will apply to everything anyway. But other than that, he's essentially accepted. He's going to call Klossner to see how Klossner reacts to my moderator's number 3, which I think you looked at, and you don't have any major heartbreak with. You just want to make sure that it doesn't change the status quo dramatically. I think it's what I'm putting on the record here is my goal was to maintain the status quo on that issue, and whatever we can do, it may end up being language that says we maintain the status quo. But having said that, if they will, the board will do what they've done here on these issues, realizing that 1, 2, and 6 had already been removed by their agreement, which is an agreement on their part to the language. Can we make this thing go?
Well, we're gonna seriously consider it. I mean, I will tell you, just by way of background, number 4, which is the question of the membership of the board, that is, we have a board involved as well, and that's the Jacksonville City Council, which passed a J-bill 2 years in a row on this matter. The Duval County Legislative Delegation passed that J-bill. It's gone through a legislative process. So, we're gonna need to.
Yeah, I think, clearly, it's something that, as mayor, I've focused on. And, there's a legislative branch and an executive branch. And so the 5th member should come, you should get a 5th member on the board from the executive branch. The delegation approved it twice. Duval delegation approved it twice. presented it to the legislature. I think, it's an important, it's very important that we look at it. What we consider, absolutely, but I think that's a major, major issue. Council, thinks is important as well. So, you have a lot of stake on that fifth appointment. Just bringing it up.
May I respond to that, Senator?
If you think you need to, but I'm going to
Sure.
give you some advice that Judge once gave to me. Don't argue a case you might be already arguing, you might be
It's
ahead.
no problem, it's good
All
advice.
right.
You may want to inquire if the city council will share one of their two appointees with you. That would be the easiest way to skin that cat.
Actually, I mean, the proper process in the consolidated government and the proper interpretation, the mayor recommendation, and council confirms, so there will be just who as the city, because they're the city.
Correct.
Well, here's where we are. I know we have number 3 to look at, but we're not far apart on number 3.
Can I make a
Yes, sir.
suggestion for number 3?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Can you reach out to Clausen today, maybe you and John reach out to him today and find out and clarify, get some clarification on number 3? I just,
You know what?
we're here.
I'm more than happy to call him. My problem is I know he's traveling because I have spoken with him. I mean, I don't want to, I have him on my
Sure.
phone like I have many of you, Joey and others, from last year. I'll try giving him a call and discuss the respective proposals on this in context of it. I want to be clear, I won't, I will come back and, as I have done, I felt free to put it in this table and in this record, and I will repeat that which I'm allowed to repeat, which is essentially, is it okay or is it not okay? And if it's not okay, how do we need to change it? And then I would bring that back and have that brought to the table so that we don't have any question about anything being done that isn't transparent to everybody. But I can try that, and I'd be happy to take that at a break here in just a minute and see if I could get that done. But I know when I spoke to him yesterday, or day before yesterday, before this, I know he was going to be traveling. And I actually talked to him about, we did not talk to him about this proposal. I talked to him about something altogether different, but I will tell you that I know he was traveling, and I know that he is going to be available next week, because I have asked him if he could possibly be available for us to get hold of him. So I will, Mr. Mayor, that's.
Yeah, I just think that,
I'll give it a try. I'll give it a try. We're this close.
I'm trying to, we're trying to come to closure on this part,
Okay.
on the governance. We have a lot of time. We can do it.
Let me, anything else, let's talk about for a moment, let's be on the optimistic side. And let's be optimistic that we either have or we get fairly early Monday a resolution of the governance issues. I'm not saying we have one. Let's assume.
Sure.
Realizing that I have put off number 9, and I will continue to put that off till we get much further into the process, because 9 is a wraparound kind of process anyway. But we already know that paragraph 6 of number 9 has been agreed upon. And there are some other paragraphs in there that probably may or may not even be relevant when we finish this. My plan then will be that we will move to current employee issues. Have you made your current employee proposals?
We have.
And those remain the proposals. So then, John, you'll react to their current employee proposals with your current employee proposals, if any, or your response to their current proposals to their proposals on current employees. You agree with that?
Yes, sir, that's a Monday project.
That's a Monday. I understand that. While we tackle that, the other issue we will tackle after current employees will be, I don't know if we're going to call it plan design, unfunded liability, whatever you want to call it. It also will deal with your investment authority. I mean, I think all those issues each of you raised last time will be questions that we raise. What else is left if we get those things resolved?
I think you've outlined all the issues. And you talked about current employees and unfunded liability. Those are-
And unfunded liability is being tied into investment authority, plan design, all that's kind of intersects there anyway. But I think the next thing we have to resolve if we've got governance, if we've got it, or if we can get it with very little changes, and paragraph 3 ought not be the holdup here, guys. Everybody at the table saying the same thing, that you're entitled to your own pension and retirement-related counsel, and that you ought to use the general counsel on ordinary matters, that ought to be the general process. I know for a fact that Mr. Kloster and and the general counsel agreed to that concept, so that ought not be a hang-up. So we ought to be able to get by that. I guess you guys will have to look at the 401, giving a better definition of what's available there as a retirement option. But I think the idea being something that gives us the board a little more flexibility, realizing that people may not, who are available for this much more elevated requirements, may not be interested in going in the general employee fund. And so I want to kind of hear back on that. But if we get that, governance can be done, and then we're on current employees. And current employees is going to be
Quick.
Well, it's quick and maybe quick. But one guy's quick is not another guy's quick. So we'll see. And then we're down to issues of unfunded liability. I'd like to take
Two
a.
are, of course, tied together, but.
I know that. I want to. Yeah.
Responding on the two paragraphs we were collecting, it would be helpful if Mr. King had a moment to think about when we close the plan, because this isn't a real plan, it's not an IRS.
We're back to paragraph 8 now.
Back to that.
Okay.
That the original MEDAP had a chance to correct my thoughts. The mediated statement was the measurement of what we get paid out in the future to be closed, and that this is a measurement in which we use it. It did not require the fund, because I think it would be against the fund's interest as a whole, to liquidate that amount, set aside an annuity and do it, because clearly the fund has the efforts to pay it. So if the measurement of retirement, that would come normally under the constraints of the FIS retirement system. So that, for example, if someone were 7 years in, we would not be liquidating an annuity, causing the trust to withdraw money from the corporate, put it in a separate account, and use that an annuity. We would be freezing, as we've talked all along, when we have different pension plans, the rights under that, and then get paid out at the appropriate time. So I think that, I'm not sure the task force focused on that difference, but I think that might be the difference in the language that's troubling us. So our intent is to adhere to what you would agree to using the FIS measurements. My recollection is it was pretty close, sometimes good for you, sometimes bad for you, all together the same. But to also follow the terms from which one would get that, so that there wasn't, I think none of us were interested in causing the funds to have to liquidate a significant amount of money and set it aside from the main body. Just the thought.
Well, what I have, what we currently have in front of us is paragraph 8 of the task force recommendation, which begins with the JPF's current senior will be frozen, and ends with as permitted by law on annuities.
Right.
What the board has said is that they accept that language. That language was language that you all had advanced, and what I would ask you to do is think this over. If you've advanced that language and they've accepted it, it seems to me like everybody's kind of agreed to it. Now, if we need some additional language from the MSA, but this is subsequent to the MSA. It is the recommendation, and the board has accepted it as a part of a package. If you're going to change that, we need to change that now. Maybe you guys take a few minutes. If they've agreed to accept that language, do you want to change that language? Do you want to accept it?
I want to make sure that we have a meeting of the minds. I don't think either side intended to be liquidating amounts from the trust and setting aside a corpus. I think they intended to recognize that we'll be paying out the amounts in accordance with the FIS special plan. And if we're going to have at the closure of the plan that was such different to be enrolled in the special plan, it probably doesn't make sense to someone who's been so with many years in, or when it's a purchase of annuities that's permitted by law, but really not, it's an expense for the board that would be unnecessary, and you have the board's commitment to pay that expense on the corpus that you invested in.
It sounds like where we are, Senator, is first of all, we made and thank you for your leadership. We've made great progress today. We've got essentially agreement on new hires. We've got agreement on multiple governance provisions, Financial and Investment Advisory Committee, ethics certification disclosure, actuarial standards. We've moved closer together on some of these others. There's just clearly some fine tuning that's got to be done on those. If there's any, and again, some additional consultation needs to be done on those if we're going to be able to get together.
I got it. But I want to warn everybody against this. When language is proposed
Right.
and language is accepted, unless I'm shown some real reason that that language as proposed and accepted is creating a problem, and you're outside my real understanding here. I'm not a pension expert, but I want us to be very cautious about advancing language, accepting language, and then saying we need to change language. I'm not saying we do, and you're not saying we do. I just want to make sure.
No, I agree with that. I think clearly proposed, we accept, we all agree. I think we're right where we need to be.
That's kind of
okay?
where I am.
I don't think that's a problem. I just
Okay,
think that there's clarification.
I'm going to take a break, try to call Bob Klossner, if that would be okay with everybody. Why don't
Sure.
we take, you guys want to take, what time is it? We're set to go to 5 today?
Yes.
Okay, then we're going to redo at 4:15. I'm going to try
Okay.
to make a call. We'll renew at 4:15 and see if we can get all this off the table.
Great.
And I'm going to take my language to, and I may have to email it directly to him, but I'll work with him. Someone, she told me, she said, in your case, we need to be paid by the word. But we can't keep up with it. Okay, guys, well, surprise, and good news, I did get a chance to talk to Bob. I read him the language, which is all I could do. I would say that there was general agreement. He asked me if I would send it to him so he could review it and get back to me tomorrow. I said I could and would, and I will. In fact, I've asked John to send it just as soon as we go. Guys, we have got a lot done today, but I am now of a position that we need to, I want to repeat kind of where I think we are, so that if anybody thinks I'm in the wrong place, and then that, I believe that right now the city is considering dropping items which I've identified as 4 and 10, but the city's got some more work to do on that issue. I think that items 1, 2, and 6 have been agreed upon already under governance, and items 3 is the one that I have just referred to, that we either have it or we're going to have something very close to it that I think we'll get. And I've talked to Cindy, but she said, I mean, you guys are saying the same things pretty close, so I don't think we're going to get that done. 7 and 8, I have asked Joey a little bit more definition on the 401. He's explained that to me. The city is considering that would be language for the employee's option to go into the general or to use that plan, but that plan would essentially be the employee's option. 11 and 12 are agreed upon, except I know that I'm not forgetting that the 2014 thing has to be massaged. 9 is not part of this. 13 has now been retracted by the city and is really out of the process. So is that where everybody thinks we are? Have I misstated or skipped anything, or is that kind of where we are?
The way I put it, we are, now that you've presented your proposal and we've heard from Mr. Keene and we've had some back and forth, we're just completing our evaluation of that proposal.
Got it.
We intend to come back Monday morning.
We'll be with you Monday morning. You
Correct.
will go, no, I'm sorry. Monday morning, I will give the reaction language from Klossner. That'll be the first thing. On 3.
Okay.
Yeah. Then it will be with you guys to respond to 3, whatever that may be, and to what you were decided you would do as to 4, 10, and 8. And then based on that, we may or may not have 5. You understand the change in 5 was insignificant. If 4 is gone, 5 is the same as it was offered, except the mayor language would come out. It's like, because the mayor would not be making the choice in 5. But that would only be adjusted that way. And so it will be, we'll respond to 3 on this side. We'll respond to
4 and 10.
the 10 and 4 on this side, 8 on this side, only as to that very narrow issue. Okay? Is that where we are? Is that what you understand? John, is that where you think we are?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, you think that's where we are?
Just where we're at.
Okay, so Monday, I'm assuming we're going to get this done pretty early, and then we're going to be moving to the next issue that I want to discuss, which will be the city's current employee proposals, your reaction, and then we'll move from there. With that, gentlemen, I think we've had a good day. We've moved a lot of material today. John, I want to thank you for preparing a lot of material today and moving. Mr. Mayor, thank you for keeping this thing focused and moving. Cindy, thank you for your time. And with that, we will convene again. For purposes of Monday morning, Madam Court Reporter, we are set to be 9 until 11:30. Monday is 9 until 11:30. We will start at 9 because that's what's going to be on the door. It'll start at 9 o'clock till 11:30. Thank you, folks. That's it for today.